in Pakistan, the more things change, the more they appear to be the same.
You're watching The Gist on Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Good evening. Our focus is on Pakistan, and I have with me Ramanathan Kumar, former Special Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. Kumar, we meet again.
Indeed, we do, and thank you very much, Surya, for having me back on your show.
So it's back to Pakistan, your favorite, the place you covered and monitored for years. We don't seem to have a result, but we have a couple of guys who are already in the running for Prime Minister. How do you square that?
Well, I think a great deal of uncertainty has surrounded this election, Surya. To begin with, there were serious doubts whether these elections would be held in the first place or not. And if you recall, I was one of those who felt that sometime around the end of January or early February 2024, the election would be held, and that is what happened in the end. But of course, there has been a great deal of, there have been all kinds of allegations about this election, about rigging, and about parties being sort of almost being muscled out of the equation, and so on and so forth. So throughout, the run up and the election itself, the counting of votes, which were marked by many strange events, so to speak. So the uncertainty has persisted, and you're right, we still don't have the complete result, but there is a broad result, as it were. And there also the tally of the reserved seats and all has to be added, and I think that's what is and there are multiple challenges to several of the results. So I think that is what is really coming in the way of a final tally being announced, but I'm sure it will in the fullness of time. And basically, the National Assembly of Pakistan has to be summoned within 21 days of the election being held. And February 8th was the election. So I'm sure we will get there eventually before the 1st of March.
Mhm. So, what do you think is going on now behind the scenes? We keep hearing reports about a certain gentleman by the name of Omar Ayub being named Prime Minister by Imran Khan. Then we have PM candidates announced by Nawaz Sharif. Um, so, that's on the public level. What's going on behind? I'm
Well,
asking
I
you to
think
speculate, really.
Imran Khan's announcement for the post of Prime Minister, I think, really doesn't count. And what is really going on behind the scenes, I think, was made amply clear by the statement released by the ISPR about what the army chief had to say about this election, 3 or 4 days ago. And the army chief said that, the country needs stable hands, mature politics, move away from the politics of polarization and anarchy, etc., etc. And that is, to my mind, was the critical sort of giveaway, and it clearly showed what powerful forces behind the scenes wanted. Stable hands essentially meant, and unity meant that they want the PMLN and the PPP to come together and form the kind of coalition that they had, before the elections were announced. And very broadly speaking, I think that is really what is going on. We are all aware that former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who, despite all the assistance that he got from the establishment or the deep state,
Yeah.
uh, managed to somehow hold on to his seat in Lahore, but he lost in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and he has since sort of withdrawn from the fray, so to speak, at least as far as the post of prime minister is concerned. And his party has named former prime minister and Nawaz Sharif's younger brother, Shahbaz Sharif, as their prime ministerial candidate. The PPP has said that they will support the PMLN in the government formation exercise and also for the post of prime minister. And as a quid pro quo, they have asked for the posts, some of the constitutional posts, which would possibly mean the speaker's post, the chairman senate's post, and possibly the post of president also, which will have to be filled up soon once the senate is constituted, etc., etc. So, or both houses are properly constituted, then the election for the new president will take place. So I would say that despite all the uncertainty which still persists, the broad picture is that the negotiations between the PMLN and the PPP, or in fact the coalition of there are a few other smaller parties as well, uh, the coalition of six parties, I think they are negotiating with the complete blessings of the military establishment in the background. And I think in the next few days, a new government comprising this coalition of the willing and possibly headed by Shahbaz Sharif will be formed.
Mhm. Would you say the army has been strengthened by the developments since February 8th, including a flawed election process, the rigging that went on? We've seen videos of that, and the manner in which PTI candidates have been targeted, and Imran himself was in jail. You think, despite all this, the army is able to hold its head high and say, we've saved Pakistan, we are credible, and all that stuff? Does it settle down the line?
Well, I think that really is the big issue, Surya. I mean, you've raised a very, very fundamental point, and it can be answered in many ways, it would be a somewhat complex answer. Looking at it from the point of view of the army, I mean, in a very short term tactical sense, one could say that they have perhaps got what they wanted, which was to marginalize Imran Khan. They made sure that the bat was taken away from him, so to speak. So, despite the fact that independent candidates, supporting him, managed to get 101 seats or emerge as the largest bloc, they are not a recognized party and therefore they cannot form the government. So Imran Khan has been kept at bay, which was definitely, it was quite apparent, that was the immediate tactic of or objective of the army. So they have managed to have their way as far as that is concerned. And clearly, one can also then add to that somebody like Shahbaz Sharif has always been, I think it is an open secret, has been the military's preferred candidate because he is not likely to challenge them on any of the, on issues that the army considers important. You have a deferential sort of prime minister. In fact, the army has always preferred Shahbaz Sharif to Nawaz Sharif, who often was often tended to become his own man. So if he becomes the prime minister, they would have got a prime minister and a government also of their choice. But then you talked of holding their head high. Certainly, I mean nobody can hold their head high in these circumstances. The evidence of rigging and manipulation is there for the entire world to see. Uncomfortable questions have been raised internationally. But the army is clearly brazening its way through. They know that there is nobody to challenge them, as has always been the case in Pakistan. But then looking further down the road, now it can be argued that, and it is well known that within the military establishment, the larger sort of, the extended military family among the retired servicemen, the family members of even serving personnel, the PTI has always had a considerable amount of support. So now that this vote has been quite patently and obviously subverted, uh, will the 30 odd percent of the electorate which has voted for Imran Khan, which predominantly consists of young voters, will they sort of sit back indefinitely and or will slowly will tensions rise, and will unrest slowly rear its head, uh, to the extent that it also affects, say, support for the army chief within the army over a
Mhm.
period of time. All that really remains to be seen. But it is possible that superficially and for some time at least, a weak civilian government may be formed, but it is quite possible that, and it may give Pakistan a veneer or a semblance of stability for some time, but it's quite possible that in the months that ensue, Pakistan may be headed for a period of greater, of more turmoil and instability.
Mhm. Tell me, Kumar, I mean, how does the army get away with so much? 50 years ago, they lost half the country. They are fighting a battle in Balochistan for years. The Afghans have turned against them. And these guys continue to perpetuate, so much of inequality and injustice on their own people. Yet they stay firm. They, like rock. How do you explain
Well,
that?
I think many Pakistani commentators would agree that it is the political leaders who are themselves to blame for this sorry state of affairs. They have always, acquiesced in the interference by the army, uh, and it can well be argued, and it is fairly well known, that a person like Imran Khan for himself, though he's raved and ranted against the army in the past few months, particularly after sort of his differences with the former army chief came out into the open. His anti-establishmentism, so to speak, is just skin deep, and if the army were to once again support him, he would sort of, kiss and make up with them very quickly. It's a different matter that he's crossed so many red lines that the army is not likely to forgive him in a hurry. But given half a chance, he would willingly go back into the arms of the army. And that is what all the political parties have done. Even the case of the PMLN now, I mean, in 2018, for instance, after he was ousted, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif talked of vote ko izzat do. But clearly, at some level now, there has been a rapprochement between the PMLN and the army, which is what enabled him to come back to Pakistan. And thereafter, the establishment went out of his way to clear all the obstacles in his way to ensure that he contests this election. So
Yeah.
all parties have done this, all political leaders have done this, and they have ceded the space to the army to intervene in politics, and that is what I think has brought Pakistan to this rather sorry pass. And I think that is the analysis of many observers in Pakistan itself.
Mhm. Before I come to the next question, a little ad break and see you in a bit. Welcome back. Resuming our conversation with Ramanathan Kumar on the Pakistan poll result. Um, we were talking about the role of the army. Would you say that, I mean, you were mentioning that a lot of young people had voted for the PTI this time. Would you say the disaffection among them in the long run, I mean, this is very speculative, disaffection among them in the long run could work against the army or it would matter?
Well, going by the, if you look at the vote share, Surya, of the parties, it's interesting to see that, it has more or less remained constant in 2018 and 2024.
Mhm.
In 2018, the PTI won about 32, 33% of the vote, which is what they have done this time also, despite, their election symbol being taken away, etc. The PMLN got about 22, 23% of the vote last time, and 5 years down the line, it still more or less remains the same. There's perhaps been a very marginal dip of half a percent or whatever, but it remains in that
Mhm.
22, 23% range. The PPP got about, I think, 13, 12, 13% of the vote, and that is where, again, they are this time 13 to 14% or thereabouts. So,
Mhm.
broadly speaking, the vote percentage of these parties has not changed. Now, in that 33% that the PTI has got, yes, I think the broad sort of assessment is that a large chunk has come from the middle class, young voters, women, um, uh, people belonging, as I said, to ex-servicemen, the larger army fraternity, etc., armed forces fraternity. So, yes, I mean, it's very difficult to say. As you said, it is speculative, but if there is any hope of, democratic forces at some point of time asserting themselves in Pakistan, which is really what, from a Pakistani perspective, which is what the country needs.
Yeah.
It is the young voters who will have to, uh, fashion a new social contract, so to speak, in Pakistan. But as the Pakistani historian Yusuf Bangash wrote recently in one of his articles, that's easier said than done. And
Absolutely, yeah.
unless there is a broad anti establishment political consensus, unless that develops in Pakistan, and it will, as you said, have to be spearheaded by the younger generation, nothing much is really fundamentally going to change in that country. And the army, the establishment, or more precisely, I would say the deep state, because if there is any country in the world where there is a deep state, it is Pakistan. The unaccounted, unelected forces
Yeah.
will continue to call the shots eventually.
Mhm. I mean, it's strange, isn't it, that the Bangladesh military, which is a clone of the Pakistani military, could step back, could see the tea leaves and step back, and this bunch is not able to give up. Probably
Yes,
it's.
I think fortunately better sense has prevailed in Bangladesh over a long period of time. And although one could say that 2007 was a bit of an aberration when the military, but there again, and even Bangladesh, Surya, I think actually it proves the point that we are discussing, that it is only when the civilian process breaks down completely
Yeah,
that
yeah.
these anti democratic forces get a chance to step in. This is what happened in Bangladesh also after 2000, in 2006, when the the four-party government, then four-party coalition government, completed its term. There was a complete impasse, and the two major political parties just couldn't agree on the composition of the caretaker government. And it is then that some of the international community, quote unquote, stepped in, and pressure was the Western countries primarily, because they felt that Bangladesh was, they had put in a lot of aid into Bangladesh, and the country was becoming ungovernable. So they stepped in, and pressure was mounted on the army, which very reluctantly then came in and cleaned up the
Yes.
mess. And fortunately, you had somebody like General Moin U. Ahmad, who was, a fairly enlightened general, so to speak. And once the job had been done, the army very quickly sort of stepped back and allowed the
Yeah.
normal political process to come into play. But the larger point really is, it is only when there is a breakdown of the civilian democratic process, when they show that they are totally incapable of running the business that they should be running, that is what really gives the space for the army and such like to step in. And
Mm. In fact,
fortunately,
when you,
Bangladesh appears to have turned the corner in that respect,
yeah.
whereas Pakistan still seems to be far from doing so.
And this has been the case with them since the very beginning. Last word, sir. Uh,
Well,
last
I
word, sir.
think the
Yeah.
last word is, I think, in Pakistan, the more things change, the more they appear to be the same.
Yeah.
And uh, fundamentally, nothing has really changed in Pakistan, despite the excitement and the fizz
Mm.
generated by this election. Yes, in some ways, the limits of electoral engineering have been shown up. You
Mm.
cannot entirely dismiss a popular politician, or the most popular politician in the country, so to speak. You can't, short of
Yeah.
physically liquidating him or her, you can't completely take him or her out of the equation. Uh, so, yes, I mean, you can't completely wish away the politicians, but unless the politicians get their act together, in a country like Pakistan, the army will continue to maintain its stranglehold over the political process.
Mm. And that's the awful reality. Ramanathan Kumar, thanks very much for that perspective. And let's see what pans out the next couple of days. We expect some um, some clarity on the political direction ahead. Thanks very much, Kumar, and glad to have you.
Thank you, Surya.
That's all we have on this edition of The Gist. Thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good night.
which is army chief is very much in control over there. So, so long as the government doesn't get ideas that it is running policy, I think the government will continue minimum of 2 years.
Welcome to the Gist on Stat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Good evening. My guest this evening is Tilak Devashar. He was a former Special Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. He's a specialist on Pakistan. He's written a number of books on it, including on Balochistan. Welcome, Tilak Devashar. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Tell me, we were discussing this a little earlier before we started this recording. Is this the kind of result the army wanted?
It's difficult to say or to get into the mind of the army what they wanted. But the army has got institutional memory of getting the results that it wants.
Yeah.
And there are three phases of it, how it goes about. After the 1970 elections, which were the freest and fairest ever in Pakistan, led to the breakaway of East Pakistan and became Bangladesh. The
Yeah.
army has taken an institutional decision since then that no election can be left to the whims and fancies of the electorate. They have to
Hmm.
engineer to ensure they get a result which will lead to their being able to dominate the government and to ensure that there is no such thing that ever happens again. So they do it in three phases. There is a pre poll rigging, in which they lay the groundwork. there is rigging during the polling, and then there is political engineering after the results are known. In this case, the pre-poll rigging was massive, including denying PTI the symbol, as a result of which all their sort of candidates had to contest as independents without a symbol. And all of them were pressurized in different ways. We all know that. During the actual
Yeah.
voting, when they found that the trends were showing a wave in favor of Imran Khan, then they moved in, and the phones were in any case switched off, results were delayed. When they did their rigging, would have done it in a limited number of constituencies. Now that the results show there are 100 independents and 70 odd PMLN and 50 odd PPP, so now they will get to work on the independents and cobble a coalition government, which will be like a PDM 2.0 with the
Hmm.
MQM, with the JUI, with other smaller parties, and these independents. So they come into power. It'll be a weak coalition, will be dependent on the army to keep it together, and the army will have its way. So, to answer your question, as Stalin put it does not matter who votes or how
Hmm.
many votes. What matters is who counts. So, to that
Hmm.
extent, the army is going to get the end result of what it had always wanted, a weak coalition
Mhm.
government that they can
You said
manipulate and control.
yeah. Mhm. So do you expect it to last?
No, that's just it. It'll last so long as the army wants it to last. And if the army finds that this is not working, they can pull the plug at any time.
Uh-huh.
So at least, but they will give this government a minimum of a year, year and a half, 2 years to perform, because quick elections or quick turnaround of elections is not something that the army wants. The government, the country can't afford another expensive election, so they will allow this government to run. And because it's a weak coalition government, which will be malleable to army's influence, the army will probably get along with it fine, so long as they are able to deliver on governance, especially on the economy, and they don't interfere in what the army considers its preserve. But these days, the army even considers the economy as its preserve. This latest
Mhm.
innovation of this strategic, this SIFC, Special Investment Facilitation Council, which said
Hmm.
it, which is army chief is very much in control over there. So, so long as the government doesn't get ideas that it is running policy, I think the government will continue minimum of 2 years.
Mhm. And another election, or can you even envisage a time when Imran Khan is forgiven? After all, both Nawaz Sharif and before that even Benazir Bhutto were forgiven and brought back.
Yeah. So, I have a favorite line that in the army chief's office there is a cupboard in which there are different hangars. So one hanger is Imran Khan, Nawaz Sharif, Shehbaz Sharif,
I think you've
Bilawal,
frozen,
Asif
Chief.
Zardari, Mariam Nawaz. So right now the Imran Khan hanger has been put back and the Shehbaz Nawaz Sharif hangers have been taken out. So when they get worn out, they may just bring back Imran Khan. The problem with Imran Khan is that he is too uncompromising. He cannot even talk to the opposition, and he can certainly not talk to Asim Munir because between him and us, General Asim Munir, there is a lot of bad blood. From the time he was threw him out as DGISI, didn't want him to become the army chief, made it very clear that it is not his preference. So there is bad blood, and because he was too obstinate and with a lot of hubris, and he thinks he's God's gift to Pakistan, he will not bend. You see, Nawaz Sharif, Asif Zardari, they've all compromised with the army at some stage or the other. That politics is the art of the possible. Imran Khan doesn't believe that. He believes politics is what he is. What he says, that's it. So he'll probably get broken if he not get bent. But for the moment, the army is going to preserve with him. Preserve him till such time as the others, uh, you know, screw it up, for lack of a better word. Then they may talk to him again at that time if he's mellowed by them.
Mhm. There is this buzz going around that Nawaz Sharif may opt out of the prime ministership and would rather that his brother take over. Do you see any merit in that?
Yes, I've heard that too. And I think the reasoning for that could be that he's probably a very disappointed man. He thought that when he came back, he would be able to galvanize Punjab and get a massive victory for the PMLN, a simple majority which he would head. Now that they have to go into a coalition, he knows,
Mhm.
and probably everybody else does, that Shahbaz Sharif can manage a coalition much better than what he can. So the
Mhm.
way it is being worked out is that Shahbaz Sharif will become the Prime Minister, Mariam Nawaz will become Chief Minister of Punjab, and I think Asif Zardari is gunning to become President. So in the compromise with the PPP, they may just agree to Asif Zardari. You see, the current president, Alvi, has completed his tenure last year.
Yeah.
But because the assemblies were not there to vote for a presidential election, a new president is in the offing. So maybe Asif Zardari would really. So Asif Zardari's calculation would be that this government can go in 2 years' time, but he gets a
Mhm.
5-year tenure. He gets
Okay.
protection from any kind of prosecution.
Mhm.
And Bilawal Bhutto, I guess, will get the foreign ministry again.
Mhm. Even
I
in
mean,
this
that's one
coming
kind of
coalition.
scenario. That's one kind of scenario being painted.
So you would expect Bilawal to enter this government, the coalition government now being formed?
Certainly, they will, look for spoils of office. Definitely, he's not going to sit out because this gives him more experience, allows him to consolidate their hold not only in Sindh but also in Punjab, where they made some inroads. By staying out of government, he doesn't achieve anything.
You expect the independence of the PTI to break up soon? They'll all succumb at some point?
You know, it's a difficult question. They'll be afraid of the revenge of the voters who have voted them into power because they are
Yeah,
PTI, because it was a vote in favor of Imran Khan. So they'll have to be very careful of that. But at the end of the day, if they find it that the price is right and they get benefits by switching, there's no political loyalty as such. So people have shifted from party to party to party. All of them have. So they'll have to find some justification, national interest, country in danger, Islam in danger, something like that. They will find a justification to switch sides. I don't see large scale people moving away, but certainly in some critical areas, definitely they'll start. One person has already switched. So,
yeah,
I think in the next 2, 3 days, because there is a certain time period in which independents have to declare their allegiance to a party.
I see.
And also because they are independents, they will not be able to get any portion of the reserved seats, 60 women and 10 minority seats. They will lose that unless they join all the 100 odd independents, join another party, not necessarily
Mhm.
PTR or PPP. Even if they join a smaller party which has got one seat, then they can claim a share. Above that again is a permutation combination people are talking about. But some I think will certainly join the PTI or the PPP.
Mhm. It's curious you mentioned that these independents may, have no particular loyalty, but the voters are loyal. I mean, the voters have brought these independents to a certain point, and what was the disillusionment among them?
Yeah, that's going to be a massive thing. And you see, the other reason why people are not talking about the massive vote and turnout which the independence of the PTI has got is because of the demographics. Now, I was just saying that almost 55 million voters were between the ages of 18 and 35. That's about 47% of the electorate. That's a huge chunk.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
the in the 2018 elections, the margin of victory in about 120 constituencies was 6,000 and below. In some cases, less than 2,000. Some cases, less than 1,000. So, if these young voters actually voted, we don't know the percentage yet. The voting percentage has not been announced. But if they had actually gone out to vote, they would make a difference and turn the election. So,
Mhm.
yes, they will certainly, they are committed to Imran Khan. not because of his performance. His performance in 3.5 years was extremely dismal, but sympathy vote. There's so many cases being piled up, lone man, everybody else against him, and everybody else he's convinced him is corrupt. So everybody apart from him is corrupt, whereas he
Yeah.
could well be the most corrupt guy, politician. But this is the dream that he has sold the youth. That Hakiki Azadi, the real freedom, will come only when I am in power, and I will take you towards Riyasat-e Madina. A lot of Islamic touches, and then his
Yeah.
personality, World Cup victory. So he's become a cult figure, and people are not, the supporters are not prepared to hear anything against them. So, having voted for him to any other candidate who then breaks away and joins another party, which Imran Khan has convinced him is corrupt, so the guy will really have to be very, very careful, because the voter anger can lead to unforeseen consequences.
Mhm. I also want to look at the army. I mean, the attacks on the army last year gave an indication that there's a lot of the electorate which has no illusions about the men in uniform. Yet the army remains rock-like in control of Pakistan's destiny. So what is going on? I mean, these people are able to stay in charge despite knowing that the public thinks they're a bunch of incompetent duffers.
Actually, that May 9th was a build up to the kind of social media, especially, and what Imran Khan had been telling the people. That he is the red line. That if anything happens to him, the people must come out and protect Hakiki Azadi and things like that. The surprising thing was that happened in Punjab, because Punjab is the bastion
Hmm.
of the Pakistan army. Bulk of the army
Yeah.
comes from Punjab, whether it's officer or whether it is men. In the rural areas, especially, and even the urban areas, many houses have people in the armed forces. So that, I think, was an eruption of anger and aberration, and that has settled in, especially when the mob attacked martyrs' memorials. Somebody who gave his life for Pakistan, you go and attack that.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I think the public and even the people. So thereafter, when the cases, he was imprisoned later and he got a whole lot of prison terms, there has been no protest, because I think people just backed off. They realized what they had done was something absolutely incomprehensible. So when he 2 days ago, when he announced victory, as did Nawaz Sharif, and he said there will be protests if I am not given the government, there were very few protests yesterday and day before. This
Yeah.
just wasn't the kind of protest which you would have expected if he had been out and the election that felt had been stolen. People are not willing to come out on the road and protest against the army because of the memory of what happened in May 9th and the kind of crackdown that the army has indulged in since almost over a year and a half. So there is resentment against the army for its interference, but at the same time, in Punjab especially, the army is also regarded as a very, you know, the institution of last resort. When everything else fails, they look up to the army for succor and for help. So there's a bit of a contradictory view, and this is the biggest dent that Imran Khan has made. He tried to create a chasm between the army and the
Mhm.
people, and that's why the army will never forget him.
But the army, would you say, has read the public mood correctly? They know they can do this and get away with it?
There again, it's there are no real sort of indicators. But if I can see the demographics, and I know the young people and the anger in the youth, frustration, price rise, all those kinds of things, the army which is there on the ground will also know the public mood is
Yeah.
such. So therefore, they've done the rigging or the political engineering over three phases. Pre-poll, during the polling, and the
Hmm.
political engineering which they will use to cobble together a coalition government that keeps out Imran Khan. The army, I'm sure, realizes it. They have 70 years of institutional memory of how to win elections. So, you can't just write them off because Imran Khan's independents have got 100 seats. And I find from most of the articles that are written, especially by a lot of Indian analysts, they seem to have gone overboard that, the army is in the doghouse and the people have won.
Yeah.
They've spoken out against and strengthened democracy and all that. I don't really believe it. The end result is what government comes into power. And by all accounts, as on date, tomorrow what happens, you can't be sure. But as on date, it's clear that it's moving towards a coalition government between the PPP and the PMLN with the support of the MQM and the other smaller parties.
Would you say Imran Khan has struck roots within the army families, people who have voted for him?
He has support. He is popular amongst the veterans, among the army officers' families. There's no doubt about that. But see, he mistook that support, that feeling people have towards him, that the army will split and start fighting against each other for his sake. Now, that's not
Mhm.
going to happen. The Pakistan army is a disciplined force. The chain of command, the unity is going to remain. No general is going to pick up and march towards another general and, have a civil war.
Mhm.
They all know that they get their perks and privileges because they are a member of the army. If the army disintegrates, what happens to all their properties, all the perks that they get? That's not going to happen. So he has support. He is popular amongst the army and the family especially, but he mistook that support to say that people will come out in his support from the army. It's a very mistaken belief
Mhm.
and purely as a
And
result of hubris.
hmm. And you don't see the army emulating its Bangladeshi counterpart and stepping back at some point? Or would you see this election as perhaps an indication that sometime in the future they'll have to do it?
You see, sometimes in the future is open-ended. It can
Hmm.
happen 20 years down the
Yeah.
road. Right now, the way the situation is in Pakistan, I don't see the army stepping back because they know that if the way Pakistan's governance has taken place, if they were to step back now and leave the civilians holding the can, the, you know, it'll all go up in flames because you have a security problem, major security, you have a major economic problem, you have political polarization. There's so many things which are wrong in Pakistan today, what's being called polycrisis, that if they were to step back and just say that we can't be, then again, they know that if the economy shrinks, first, nobody can afford, or Pakistan cannot afford such a large army.
Yeah.
So everybody will say, hey, cut down a couple of crores. So to preserve their own privileges and perks, they will make sure that the governance stays, on track. So I don't see them stepping back at all. Not in the immediate, not in the medium term either.
Mhm.
And no army chief
So
would like
finally,
to downsize the army.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, any take you have on perhaps relations with India, which way how things could go?
Very early. You see, first of all, in India, there is no appetite
Yeah,
for any
absolutely.
kind of thing with Pakistan. Now, Pakistan elections are going to throw up a coalition. So, again, it will be very difficult to assess which way the coalition is going to, who in the coalition actually matters where foreign relations are concerned. Besides, I think Pakistan has more serious foreign policy concerns, the relations with the US, with China, with Afghanistan, with Iran, for them also to expend any political capital on looking at the relations with India. So I don't see anything happening for at least the next 6 months, and especially
Mhm.
after our own elections. At that time, a review, I guess, would be done to see where Pakistan is at and where can you start, you know, rebuilding the threads.
Mhm. You see any incipient moves towards trade, assuming Shehbaz Sharif shares the same ideas as Nawaz Sharif?
At this stage, I think it will be very difficult because
Hmm.
the old Imran Khan line remains that unless India walks back on 5th August 2019, changes in Kashmir, there can be no talks or trade. And in the
Yeah.
PMLN manifesto, the same thing was also reiterated. So I don't see how Shehbaz Sharif or anybody else, unless they modify that through parliament or through cabinet decision or something, I don't see any of that. It's a very low hanging fruit. Restoration of high commissioners, they were the ones who withdrew it. Trade also they stopped. So they will have to walk back a long way, before India
Mhm.
can even think of anything like that.
Interesting, Tilak Devashar. Thanks very much for that insight and perspective. And we'll probably be coming back to you at some point as things over there move forward. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Surya. Thanks for having me over. Thank you.
And that's all we have on this edition of The Gist. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good night.
It also depends that whether PTI can get, or would they be fielding or choosing the right candidates for the right constituencies, because selection of candidates is also half of the elections. So another big thing is that people in Punjab also see whether the leader of their party, which they are going to vote, is out there or not. Is he going to become the prime minister or not? So these all factors are there. So let's see how people of Punjab and rest of the country react.
Welcome to The Gist on Strat News Global. I'm Ramanathan Kumar. Our guest today is Azaz Syed, an Islamabad-based journalist with Pakistan's largest media network, the Jung Geo Group, and the author of The Secrets of Pakistan's War on Al-Qaeda. He's also a media trainer and hosts a popular YouTube channel called Talk Shock. And we're going to discuss the return of exiled Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to Pakistan a couple of days ago. Thank you so much for joining us, Azaz. I know that it's been a hectic few days for you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Let's start right from the beginning. Then how is Nawaz Sharif's return being seen in political circles as well as among the common people?
Well, Nawaz Sharif, is previously thrice elected prime minister, one of very popular leaders here. But you know that Imran Khan has also a very big presence here in terms of his popularity. Nawaz Sharif has come after almost 4 years self-exile. He had gone to UK for a medical treatment after the courts and the Imran Khan government had granted him a permission, though that permission was controversial in its legal nature, as nobody ever had been given such kind of permission in the past. Now Nawaz Sharif has come at a time when Imran Khan is in jail. The country is being governed by an interim setup, which is going to hold the elections, and next elections are likely to be held in coming January. So the PTI is on the run, and PMLN is taking back. In Pakistan, you must have seen that Nawaz Sharif has addressed a big rally in Lahore, which was very well attended. At the same time, the PTI and the critics of Nawaz Sharif, they are also criticizing him that he has come to Pakistan after striking a deal with the establishment.
What kind of a deal do you think he has struck with the military? Because apart from, getting bail, he also has to have the cases against him taken off before he can sort of, actually contest in that sense. Do you think the courts are going to let him go? I believe the hearing is tomorrow.
Well, there are two cases in which he was convicted. And at the same time, you see when these cases were being proceeded against him, there was a big question on these cases, that these cases were framed against him, although they don't have any weightage. And we know that whenever an elected prime minister is asserting himself, this is the history of this country, sometime they have had a collusion with the establishment. Same happened with Nawaz Sharif. At that time, Nawaz Sharif was on the left side of the establishment, and he was actually having a head-on collusion with the establishment. Now things have been changed. Mr. Imran Khan has used violence on 9th of May when his followers, they attacked different military installations here. So now there is a convergence of interest. Nawaz Sharif wants to come back. He wants to contest elections, and establishment wants somebody to support establishment, because establishment in Pakistan has become unpopular. So this is convergence of interest. And at the same time, if you look at the role of the judiciary, the incumbent Chief Justice of this country, Qazi Faiz Isa, he had already advised against these cases while these cases were being proceeded against Nawaz Sharif almost 3 years back. This man, Chief Justice of the Pakistani Supreme Court, already had criticized these cases, thinking that they don't carry the weight. So getting bail from the courts, I don't think so that would be a big issue, and there should be a smooth sailing.
So you're saying that that's more of a formality than anything else. But Nawaz Sharif, if I recall right, he was once removed because he was getting, or as the establishment saw, he was getting too friendly with India. And then, of course, the next time by Musharraf in that coup after Kargil. What has changed since then? Why has the army changed its mind?
Having good relationship with India remained a area which was not liked by the establishment. But now you see, Nawaz Sharif on 21st of October had addressed a big rally, and in that particular rally, which was very well attended, as I had told you, in that rally, Nawaz Sharif particularly mentioned that we cannot progress, we can't get success until we stop fighting with the neighbors. If we need to progress, we need to have good relations with the neighboring countries. So, in terms of economy, what is the context? The context is India. And this is, I think so, very big development in terms of Pakistan, that apparently now Nawaz Sharif is being seen as a future prime minister. So if he is taken as a future prime minister, or even if he doesn't become prime minister, he would be leading his party. So he has given he has given a clear line that he would be consistent upon his previous policies to have good relations with the neighboring countries, particularly with India.
But that's interesting, given that your last army chief, I believe, he had a fallout with Imran Khan over getting friendly with India, and Imran Khan said no, whereas the army chief was actually saying that we should be friends with India. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is very much correct. General Bajwa was of the opinion that Pakistan should have good relations with India. He wanted to have trade relations. He wanted to relax the visa regime between the two countries, and he was supportive of that idea. But unfortunately, Imran Khan didn't. Imran Khan was on a different side.
But that's a very, very significant shift in terms of the establishment, how it views the whole relationship with India. Is that again due to some kind of a economic and other compulsion, or is that a genuine sort of a mindset shift?
With the passage of time, both the countries have learned many lessons. Pakistan and Pakistani establishment has understood what is the importance of India, and I think so. On your side, India is also understanding that that relations should be good between the two countries. So Pakistani establishment, which was previously criticized that it remained a hurdle between the relations of two countries. Now, I think so they have understood and they have the clarity that this region should be progressing, and when region would be progressing, they would also be progressing, and this all is possible only once you have the good relations with all the neighboring countries.
That's again very interesting because one of the reasons everybody, I mean, conventional wisdom says that one of the reasons why the army was sort of adamant about, showing India as the belligerent neighbor is because that allowed them to gain a lot of benefits, saying that, we are here to protect you and hence we need, these benefits and this kind of money to keep protecting you. Has that, I mean, has that attitude changed? Because it might just undermine the army's role.
Time will tell that it will undermine the role of the military establishment or not. The time will tell,
Mhm.
because we like it or not like it, Pakistan Army is a central organization in this country, which is very powerful, which has
Right.
command and unity, and as a disciplined force. They are they are very full. They are very powerful. Time will tell what whether the role of the military would be reduced or not, because it's also related. It's actually related to the internal dynamics of this country, whether the Pakistani parliament and democratic political parties, they become strong or not. So time will tell about it.
Because I mean, I would be very hopeful then that real democratic institutions which actually get strengthened if that happens. Number one, but politically, the PPP had joined hands with the PMLN earlier because of to fight Imran Khan, but now they are sort of crying foul, saying that the establishment is making special allowances for Nawaz Sharif and all that. How is that going to play out?
Well, the Pakistan People's Party was expecting that they would be getting some kind of space in Punjab, which is like UP in your country. So they were thinking that they might be getting some space in Punjab, which is actually a battleground between PMLN led by Nawaz Sharif and PTI led by Imran Khan. So
Right.
the return of Nawaz Sharif has clearly given them a signal that there would be no space for the Pakistan People's Party. So they are confined towards to Sindh only, one province. So they are criticizing each other, but in the past they remained ally, and in the future, they would be again ally when elections would held, and there would be the results. So this is a time, until the elections, you will see that People's Party will be criticizing PMLN, and rest of the political parties will be criticizing each other, because they are contesting each against each other. They are not in election alliance. They remained allied while for forming the last government, but they were
Right.
not. They didn't make any election alliance.
Hmm. So, I mean, does that mean that they're become a sort of a third rung player after PMNL and Tehreek-e-Insaf and then PPP? Is that how the situation is seen right now?
Well, time will tell what the election results would come. That would tell that who's standing where. But it is apparent that PMLN would be contesting elections against PTI, and Sindh will go to Pakistan People's Party. And in
Hmm.
Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, pockets of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa will go to PMLN probably, or to some other political parties. So the main political parties would remain PMLN, PTI, PPP. So these three parties would lead the national spectrum.
Hmm. But talking of, Imran Khan's party, even though he's no longer able to contest this election, and he's had a lot of defections by people who have started their own parties and things like that, how strong is the, PTI going to be this time?
This time, PTI would be facing a tough time, because Imran Khan would be in the jail. We don't see his release anytime sooner. And at the same time, we also see that he might also face the problem of good election candidates in different constituencies. So this would be quite difficult for PTI and Imran Khan, because they are not having good time here.
Because a lot of these people who defected or started their own parties, they might gain some splinter votes here and there, but which would then in turn, if they start also winning some votes, it would probably lead to a sort of a hung, assembly in that sense. I mean, in the sense you'll have to have sort of a cooperation with a bunch of other parties to do that. Is that an army technique of ensuring that PMNL doesn't get a totally clean sweep?
Sorry?
Is that a way by let's say, the establishment? Because many of these people who broke off from the PTI have started their own parties and things. And many of them are also, I believe, supported by the establishment to launch their own party. Is that a way of the establishment to ensure that, Nawaz doesn't really get a full overwhelming majority? That sort of keep him on his toes?
Yet, I don't think so that the even establishment wants somebody to have the clear majority. I think so. The establishment is, prosecuting about 102 the people, mainly the PTI activists who had attacked the military installations. So establishment
right.
is actually focusing on PTI. Rest of the political parties, I have not seen that they are supporting anybody or they are not supporting anybody. Yes, they are. You can see that there are not good relations between them and the PTI. But if you ask me, or if you tell me that establishment is supporting party A, B, or C, I don't find any footprints here. But yes, they have they had given the node. This is why Nawaz Sharif is back. This is also true. But if you ask that that establishment wants any visible clean majority of Nawaz Sharif, I don't think so that establishment is taking any steps for that.
So, if and when Nawaz Sharif does become prime minister, let's say next year, he's going to inherit a whole host of problems, including economic and terrorism and a whole other bunch of things. First of all, how have the common people been sort of bearing the brunt of this inflation and everything? How has it been for you? Has life become very difficult for you in terms of economy?
No doubt about it that the economy has given a big blow to the commoners in this country. There is no second opinion, but at the same time, you're talking about the next government. It is yet not clear who will come in the government. Apparently, yes, there are signs, there are some footprints as if PMLN is going to take the charge of this country. And, the biggest challenge before any political party would be the challenge of reviving this country's economy. Yes, that would be a biggest challenge, no doubt about it. In terms of terrorism, you've seen that quite tangible steps has been taken to control terrorism. Yes, terrorism is Pakistan is fighting with the terrorists. Pakistan is controlling terrorism. But in terms of terrorism coming to Punjab or Sindh, that is less likely. Yes, the TTP, TTP is coming from Afghanistan. They are attacking Pakistani police and law enforcement agencies, mostly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. But I think so now new mechanisms are being introduced, and new SOPs and new directions have been given to fight them in a different way. So hopefully by next year, this situation would be quite under the control of the government.
That's interesting because what the narrative here seems to be that the tensions with Afghanistan have gone up as well, to quite a high extent. That's going to be another problem that Nawaz Sharif will probably inherit. What do you think would be an easy way out? Because I believe a lot of Afghans have been sent back from the camps and everything back to Afghanistan, and the tensions are going. How does one resolve that problem?
Again, when new government will come, they will devise their own policy. They will devise their own foreign policy. They will devise their own internal security policy. So I think so. It's there's a big distance between today and up to elections, and then elections up to the formation of new government. Things are quite murky here. Let the political environment get clear, dust get clear.
Mhm.
We will see what is the exact date of the elections, and when elections are scheduled, and what happens
Mhm.
in the elections. This is very, very important, because
Okay.
PTI is still, Imran Khan is still very popular. Although he's in the jail, he's still very popular. And if he fields his candidates in the constituencies, how people would react. So these are very important points.
Mhm. So you're saying that Imran Khan, I mean, the PTI is still a powerful force. It's not a spent force yet. I
Still,
mean, they might just get a sympathy vote or something like that.
PTI is still a very popular party. There is no second opinion, and that party is very popular in Punjab. But it
Mhm.
also depends that whether PTI can get, or would they be fielding or choosing the right candidates for the right constituencies, because selection of candidates is also half of the elections. So another big thing is that people in Punjab also see whether the leader of their party, which they are going to vote, is out there or not. Is he going to become the prime minister or not? So these all factors are there. So let's see how people of Punjab and rest of the country react.
Mhm. But do you see any sort of a second-rung leader out of the PTI who's already sort of making a name for himself as part of the PTI?
At
Most of them
at
are
yet
in jail or
at yet there are two leaders. One is Mr. Imran Khan, and after Imran Khan there are two leaders. One is Shah Mahmood Qureshi. He is
Mhm.
co-accused in Cypher case, and the third one is Pervez Elahi. He's also behind the bars. So
Right.
apparently there is no prominent leader there against whom or with whom you can on whom you can bank upon.
Uh-huh. If you're saying elections are going to be held next year, early next year, is there going to be a lot of time left for campaigning? You'll barely get a month or so. I mean, a couple of months perhaps. Is
I
that
think
going?
so. Yeah, there would be only couple of months,
Mhm.
November and December, and we expect that at the end of January we'll be having
Mhm.
elections. So technically, there would be 3 months only, and
Okay.
which is technically 90 days,
Yeah,
which
that
is
is good enough time actually
required
if
by
you
the
look at it.
constitution.
That is actually a good time. But
Yeah.
among the people, I mean, I mean, straddle both sides. You look at the people's sort of thing as well as the politicians. What is the mood among the people? Have they sort of become happy that Nawaz is here and hoping for a brighter thing, or is it that they're too busy trying to fight the economic problems to actually think about elections?
Well, the activists and the followers of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz and supporters of Mia Nawaz Sharif, they are very happy that Nawaz Sharif is back. There is no second opinion. But a large number of people is busy, stuck in fighting the economic crisis, because this
Hmm.
crisis is being faced by each and every individual who lives in this country. So people are also worried about their economic well-being. They are facing problems, they're facing tough times, but at the same time, the followers and the supporters of Nawaz Sharif, they are very happy. And when Nawaz Sharif addressed the big rally, Pakistani trade index gone up.
Yes.
This has happened in the first time in these weeks and months. So
Hmm.
this is a good omen. But at the same time, there is also a large number of people excuse me, there are also large number of people who are not happy. They are supporters of Imran Khan, and they consider
Okay.
all whatever is happening. They think that whatever is happening, that's happening because of the establishment, and establishment has sent their leader behind the bars, and they have given Nawaz Sharif a note. So diverse opinions, but majority will be determined on the election day.
Hmm. But I recall Nawaz Sharif, even during his last sort of talk, he spoke about Mariam becoming the next leader post his thing as his successor. Similarly, if you look at Bilawal, I think he's also been hoping for a long time that he will become a thing. For Bilawal himself, how popular is Bilawal as a leader? He's a young, up and coming leader, so he would, I suppose, have some followers.
Bilawal is no doubt a bright face of Pakistani politics, but unfortunately, Bilawal is not having good popularity in Punjab, which is the central province where election results determine whether who would become the prime minister or who would lead this country, which party would lead this country. Unfortunately, Bilawal and his party, Pakistan People's Party, is not having good support from Punjab. And Nawaz Sharif's arrival has further, actually given a bad signal to Pakistan People's Party.
Uh-huh. So, I mean, what I'm hearing from you, the very positive thing that I heard from you now is that, that there's a possibility that trade might be resumed with India. That's truly a very positive trend that I'm hearing about. Let's hope that happens. And I know you must be very busy covering all these election trends and all that. So I really appreciate your taking time out for this. So thank you very, very much, Azaz. I appreciate your taking time out for us. And, I look forward to having you with us again once the elections are
Ramanathan,
actually
thank you.
on the road.
Ramanathan, thank you.
Thank you very much. And, I'll see you again the next time. Thank you, Azaz. That was Islamabad-based journalist Azaz Syed talking to us about the implications of Nawaz Sharif's return to Pakistan. I do hope you enjoyed this edition of The Gist, and I look forward to seeing you again the next time. Please remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons below. Thank you. Until the next time, goodbye.
But that's Pakistan's own making. I have seen it happening. When I was Deputy High Commissioner, the Taliban arose then, and with Pakistan's help, then they established a government controlling a large part of Afghanistan's territory. Until then, 9/11 came and the Americans came back, and Pakistan turned overnight from a supporter of the Taliban to the frontline state in the war against terror. But that was a tricky, half-hearted U-turn. Even as they became a frontline state for the Americans, they continued to harbor the Taliban, support them, and so on. Eventually, they were victorious. So when Pakistanis, even in the 90s, I used to read them, only 3 or 4. Those days, they thought that they had defeated the mighty Soviet Union, and they had these large number of jihadis at their disposal, whom they could use to have strategic depth in Afghanistan, whom they could use to, create terror in Kashmir, etc., etc.
Welcome to The Gist on Stat News Global. I'm Ramanathan Kumar. Our guest today is Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, former High Commissioner to Pakistan and Ambassador to Uzbekistan. He's a columnist for various newspapers, and he's also the author of India's Pakistan Conundrum, Managing a Complex Relationship, which is a must-have for anybody who's interested in the subcontinent. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir, at such short notice.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your coming in today. So let me just take it from the top, sir. Pakistan has sort of been moving from crisis to crisis ever since independence. How is this particular crisis different?
Well, as you know, Pakistan has been a troubled and a troublesome state, a dysfunctional state, almost right from the beginning, from its inception. Now, it faces multiple crises at the moment, 3 major crises. economic crisis, a political crisis, and the rising wave of TTP terror. To be sure, all these problems have been there earlier also. The difference now is they are far more intense and far more intractable than before. I'm sure we'll come to each one of those issues separately when we can talk more about them.
Yes, sir. Today, let's start with the political stuff first. Today I heard that, the PMLL president of Punjab, Rana Sanaullah,
Sanaullah,
who said that, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will be back in Pakistan on October 21st. And he said he is going to be under protective bail and would surrender to the court after his welcome reception. Now, do you think he would have done that without having some kind of a deal already organized?
I would think, he waited for the last Chief Justice to retire, Umar Ata Bandial. As you know, that Chief Justice was ill-disposed towards the government, Shahbaz Sharif government. He tilted very clearly towards Imran Khan. His sympathies were very clear. So they waited for Qazi Faiz Isa, the current Chief Justice, to take over. That in itself should be some kind of reassurance for them. As you know, Qazi Faiz Isa has some grouse against Imran Khan, because Imran Khan's government had filed a reference against him in the Supreme Judicial Council. So the expectation probably will be that with Qazi Faiz Isa there won't be much of a trouble for Nawaz Sharif. Although I must say, Umar Ata Bandial, just before he laid down office, he reopened the cases against politicians, cases which had been closed under a law passed by the parliament. He declared that law null and void. So all those cases have been reopened, including some against Nawaz Sharif. So he'll have to face those cases. But I think the expectation is that he would get some kind of consideration from the current judicial dispensation. And I would agree with you. Yes, there could have been some signals from the security establishment also.
Because if I recall right, I think the current Chief Justice was also, I think, against Nawaz Sharif being sort of, penalized for the last time, when he was actually penalized for not being honest and truthful or whatever.
Yes, that was a completely very dubious kind of accountability, rushed through by the Supreme Court under the directions of the Chief Justice in a manner and at a speed which is so uncharacteristic of the normal judicial system in Pakistan. So that was dubious accountability. That's quite clear. And I think Qazi Faiz Isa had also given a judgment, which is being talked of these days also, against the role of the army when Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, mounted an agitation in Islamabad during the PMLN government. And it was the army which brokered a deal, and they were seen distributing money to the protesters as they left. So that demonstration, that agitation was organized essentially to pressurize the PMLN government, and the army played a role there. Now, Qazi Faiz Isa had given a decision against that role, and that's why the army then engineered a reference through the Imran Khan government to the Supreme Judicial Council against Qazi Faiz Isa. So he defended himself. The complaints were against some dealings, money dealings of his wife, and they were able to explain things, and the Supreme Court then eventually exonerated him. But I think that complaint is in his mind.
I see. So there is something called, I think, Supreme Court Practice and Procedure Bill, which sort of aims to curtail the Chief Justice's powers a little. Do you think that has something to do with this, with Nawaz Sharif's getting some relief?
Actually, that was aimed at the previous Chief Justice, Umar Ata Bandial. As I said, he leaned towards Imran Khan, and he gave some decisions, important decisions against Shahbaz Sharif government. Now, what he was doing was, he was exercising his suo motu power to
Mhm.
take up some cases. B, he was constituting benches of his own liking. He was excluding judges who he thought would not side with him, including those he thought would side with him. So that
Mhm.
law was passed by the parliament to deprive him of those powers.
I
And
see.
it was, he imposed a sort of a ban on it, and he said it would not become applicable. That case has been taken up by Qazi Faiz Isa in a full court. All judges he has included
Mhm.
in that bench. And I think a hearing took place even today. Now, the idea was not to deprive the Supreme Court of those powers. The idea was to disperse the powers of the Chief Justice to take suo motu notice and to constitute benches. And as I said, it was aimed more at Umar Ata Bandyal. Qazi Faiz Isa, although he has his complaint, against Imran Khan, although he has, he's expected, to be more favorable to PMLN
Mhm.
and other parties which were with them. But we'll have to see how he proceeds, as cases come up to him, because he's also seen as a very upright person. So whether
That's
he'll
right.
go all the way to, defend them or defend Nawaz Sharif, that will become clear in the days to come.
But I'm curious, sir, wasn't Nawaz Sharif once sort of kicked out simply because he was trying to get better trade ties with India?
There were various reasons, when he became prime minister the third time. Look, he had an uneasy history with the army all along, with his army chiefs. He fell out with all of them. In one case, then Musharraf mounted a coup against him and he was thrown out of power. When he came to power a third time, he did a few things. Not only the India relationship, which of course the army wasn't happy with whatever he wanted to do, but more importantly, he took up cases against Musharraf, including a treason case. For the emergency that he had declared in 2006, I think November
Right.
or December 2006. And that was the last thing that the army wanted to see. You see, if one former army chief is punished, it lays open all retired army chiefs to that kind of action. And the fact is, all of them, when they head the army, they have been going far beyond the limits of the constitution. Each and every one of them. So each one and every one of them can be hauled up. I think that is something which the army didn't like. And then, of course, Nawaz Sharif's tendency in general to have the upper hand as the civilian elected prime minister over the army. That is something that they like. So then Bajwa, along with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, then Chief Justice, organized this, what I call dubious accountability. And a case was rushed through Nawaz Sharif in the lower court at a speed which is totally uncharacteristic of the slow-moving Pakistani judicial system. Then, of course, he was disqualified, so he lost power, and then Shahid Khaqan Abbasi continued. He became prime minister. The MLN government continued. But then eventually in 2018, the army turned the electoral field completely against PMLN and in favor of Imran Khan and brought Imran Khan to power. But of course, they fell out with him. That, of course, is a different.
Speaking of Imran Khan, now with so many defections and arrests of top leaders, I believe Qureshi is also in jail and he's also unknown. Is this the end of the road for Imran Khan and PTI?
I think for the coming elections, yes, because Asim Munir, the current chief of army staff, who is very influential now, actually behind the scenes, he's wielding a lot of influence on the political process. He would like to see Imran Khan come back to power because Imran Khan, when he was prime minister, Asim Munir became DG ISI, and Imran Khan moved him out within months. I think 4 or 5 months, to bring in someone he was fond of. Faz Hamid, who then, of course, wasn't made army chief, and he lost out. He wanted to become army chief with the support of Imran Khan. So Asim Munir wouldn't like him to come back. He was released in one case, the Tosha Khana case, by the High Court. but then he was rearrested and continues to be in detention in another case. Mishandling of a classified message received from the Pakistan embassy in Washington, D.C. So the army's intentions are quite clear. Most of the senior leaders are in detention. And what they can do is they can make sure that no worthwhile candidate takes up a PTI ticket when the elections come. Now, the problem, of course, is that in spite of his being under arrest, he remains very popular. A Gallup poll, which was conducted in June and the results were released, I saw them recently in the Pakistani press, shows his popularity rating at 60% compared to 36% for Nawaz Sharif, who has been the most popular politician in Punjab, the largest province in the past. So that's a problem for the army. I did see some reports in the social media. I have no confirmation of that. That the army may be trying to talk to him, bring some more reason in him. I don't know whether that is true or to what extent they would succeed. My own feeling is the preponderant possibility is chances are that he will be kept out of the next election. He and maybe not necessarily his party, but they'll make sure that no worthwhile candidate takes their ticket. So the chances of success are minimal. But of course, you can't write him for all times to come. Look, prime ministers ousted in the past, whether Benazir or Nawaz Sharif, have come back. So what happens in the long run, we don't know.
In fact, for all you know, it probably gets them some sympathy to come back the next time.
Oh, yes, it depends. It depends, I mean, these generals keep on playing these games. So there is, I can imagine a situation, a future general who is unhappy with the parties around. And he feels that, look, this man is now has mellowed down. He's learned his lessons. He's willing to toe our line. And some kind of agreement is struck with him and he comes back. Will that happen? We don't know. As I said, that's very difficult to predict.
Of course. In fact, I mean, in Pakistan, anyway, most things are very difficult to predict. You don't know which way it's going. Sir, let's talk economics, sir. I mean, I'm hearing that things are quite a mess in economic terms. They seem to have somehow bailed themselves out of a default, but I think they still owe a lot of money, which is going to come up soon for repayment. What happens then?
Well, they had the sword of default hanging on them for the last 1 year or so, until they got a $3 billion 9-month deal from the IMF.
That's right.
The idea seems to have been to give them a deal to tide over the elections period. And then the IMF deals with the new government. Now, elections themselves, when they take place, that's an uncertainty. That has happened. That prevented the default. And now we hear, and there are reports, that deal was facilitated by the Americans because Pakistan sold munitions to Ukraine through Western countries. Went through Western countries. But Pakistan sold munitions to Ukraine. So, then the Americans exercised their influence with IMF and ensured that the deal was struck. But as you rightly said, Pakistan has to repay $75 or $76 billion over the next 3 years, repayment of loans and so on. So what can they do? A, they can borrow from the commercial market, where the possibilities are very limited because of Pakistan's macroeconomic situation. B, they can, get money from their friends, China, Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., or ask them to reschedule repayment of their loans. That they have been doing, but that doesn't solve the problem entirely. And 3, they seek restructuring of their entire debt. That they may have to do at some stage. If that doesn't happen, they may default again. But what is certain is that the Pakistan economy will come back time and again to the breaking point, as it has been in the past, unless the government takes some structural measures to remedy the problems of the economy. And one of them, important one, is to tax the rich. The managing director of IMF told the caretaker prime minister very recently, you tax the rich. You keep on telling me your poor have problems. You ask me to give you exemptions for that. Tax your rich and help the poor. Now, is Pakistani establishment willing to do that? Pakistani establishment headed by the army, because all the rich people, whether they are agriculturists, whether they are industrialists, the army businesses, they all get big tax breaks. Are they willing to give them up? So unless Pakistan deals with the structural problems and the biggest problem of Pakistan's economy is Pakistan's adversarial attitude towards India. That imposes very heavy burdens on Pakistan's, unbearable burdens on Pakistan's economy. And the gap is growing, and that burden keeps on growing as far as smaller Pakistani economy is concerned. That is something which is never acknowledged. I see so many articles written by well-meaning Pakistanis on how to improve the economy. They fail to talk of this one particular aspect. So unless Pakistan deals with all these problems, as I said, the economy will keep on coming back to the breaking point time and again, even if there is no default. But if there is a default, that will be a very serious situation. It will bring a lot of hardship to the people and cause further instability in Pakistan.
Right, right. Now, you mentioned $75 billion. Is does that include the money for CPEC and all that stuff that you already owe to China?
Yes, it's all told that they have to repay. Actually, Chinese debt is only about 25% of the overall debt.
Okay.
About $130 billion. And Chinese is about 25%. Some of them is long term, some of that is short term. The rest is commercial debt, which is all short term, or multilateral institutions, or Paris Club countries, and so on. But the next 3 years, all told, they have to pay $75 to $76 billion. And they just don't earn that money. Their exports are not enough, after taking into account imports. They've been getting about $25 billion or so as remittances from Pakistanis working abroad. But all these things put together, after taking into account imports, which are also essential, are not enough to meet those requirements.
So coming back to the CPEC, I mean, it really hasn't met any of the goals that the Chinese had set for itself on CPEC. Is that something, what they call too big to fail thing for China? So they'll keep on putting something into it?
What is clear is this: the CPEC projects have not produced the kind of foreign exchange and earnings that would have been expected to meet the debt burden that CPEC has imposed on Pakistan. So that debt burden has worsened things for Pakistan in terms of its debt, in terms of its repayment capacity, etc., etc. I think, and then there are serious security problems. Chinese nationals and Chinese interests have been attacked in Pakistan.
Right.
That remains a very touchy point with the Chinese. There are indications now that the Chinese are becoming more cautious towards new projects proposed by Pakistan under CPEC. In fact, there was a meeting which took place. There is a joint committee of the two sides which considers CPEC projects, old and new. A meeting took place almost last year, and joint minutes couldn't be finalized almost for 1 year. They were issued recently.
Just recently.
Very recently. And they show that the Chinese refuse to accept a number of projects proposed by the Pakistanis. So that tells you that they are becoming cautious. They don't want to sink their money unless things improve. So that is quite clear. But look, there are two components of CPEC here. One is the route linking Xinjiang to Gwadar.
Right.
Now that is strategically extremely important for the Chinese. That is one of the exit routes for the Chinese to the sea, bypassing the maritime choke points in the east, which always remain a matter of worry for them, the Malacca Strait, etc. So that route they would maintain at all costs. Security problems, money, whatever is needed. The second is, projects, whether in energy or free trade zones or, various other infrastructure projects, the dams, etc., etc., which were essentially meant to, bring some greater activity in the Pakistani economy, in the economy of an ally of China. That they may have to reassess and see how it moves forward. How far that segment succeeds, we don't know. But the route, I'm sure they will make every possible effort to make sure that it is sustained.
But sir, I mean, you said that they're not willing to invest more. Wouldn't that again impact the growth of the project itself? I mean, if you're not willing to add more funds into it, that would in turn slow down recovery.
No. I think I should correct that impression. They are continuing with the existing projects which have been accepted. This is the new projects which Pakistan had proposed in various areas, in energy, in infrastructure, various other projects.
Right.
Many of those projects that did not accept the new projects. But they haven't discontinued financing the existing ongoing projects.
Oh, okay. And also, as you said, it's from the port itself also is the route to the a sea route which opens up, as you said. That's also a very big factor for them.
That is an important factor. That's one of the exit routes for them to the sea.
Right.
Bypassing the maritime choke points. That essentially is potentially also a staging point, the Makran coast for Chinese Navy into the Arabian Sea and beyond.
Right. Sir, we've talked about political issues, we talked about the economic issues, and economic issues, from what little I have heard from my friends there, this time it's pretty bad in the sense that, people are actually digging into their savings to sort of pay for daily, expenses. But on top of that, as you said, there's terrorism with the TTP sort of stepping up its act. But apart from TTP, earlier you also mentioned Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the NWFP, all those areas. How does one resolve that? Because that's also a very, not a good thing on the economy itself or on the political situation.
But that's Pakistan's own making. I have seen it happening. When I was Deputy High Commissioner, the Taliban arose then, and with Pakistan's help, then they established a government controlling a large part of Afghanistan's territory. Until then, 9/11 came and the Americans came back, and Pakistan turned overnight from a supporter of the Taliban to the frontline state in the war against terror. But that was a tricky, half-hearted U-turn. Even as they became a frontline state for the Americans, they continued to harbor the Taliban, support them, and so on. Eventually, they were victorious. So, well-meaning Pakistanis, even in the 90s, I used to read them, only 3 or 4. Those days, they thought that they had defeated the mighty Soviet Union, and they had these large number of jihadis at their disposal, whom they could use to have strategic depth in Afghanistan, whom they could use to create terror in Kashmir, etc., etc. So very few Pakistanis, but well-meaning Pakistanis even then said, this is a bad card. Please don't use it. And then Pakistanis ensured their victory in 2021 when everyone was saying that they will not cut off their ties with TTP. TTP has fought alongside them. They have ideological affinities. The Taliban also remain worried that if they start getting tough with the TTP, many of their warriors could go to the Islamic State, which is a big problem for them. So therefore, the Taliban are not going to act against TTP. Pakistan has been asking them to do so. They have tried multiple times, but the number of attacks, the intensity of attacks has only grown. And I saw a report recently that the number of security personnel killed over the last 7-8 months was the highest in the last 8 years for a single year. So the situation is very serious, and it's not going to change. It's not going to change because it's a monster that the Pakistanis have created, and it's very, very difficult to control it.
And
so
that monster is coming.
the political process will have no impact on it. Unless they completely revise their policy, now that I don't know if that's possible at the stage at which they have reached.
They're also having a problem with the Taliban government in Afghanistan. How does one deal with that?
No, that's exactly what I told you. They ensured the victory of Taliban. They helped the victory of Taliban in August 2001.
Right.
But you see, any Afghanistan, government in Afghanistan, which gets a foothold there are hundreds of issues with Pakistan that Afghanistan has, including, transit trade. There are difficulties there. The question of Durand Line, which hasn't been recognized by any Afghan government, including the Taliban. They haven't recognized the Durand Line. So this should have been clear to the Pakistanis. Pakistan as a neighbor of Afghanistan could have been relevant to Afghanistan in many positive ways. But instead of that, in trying to gain a strategic depth and, have a government of their choice in Afghanistan, they have today created a situation that any government in Kabul will have many problems with them. And that's what is happening with the Taliban. They do have some elements within the Taliban very sympathetic to them. But overall, they haven't got the kind of response that they were expecting from the Taliban. It's not been anything but smooth sailing that they might have expected.
I see. So, if Nawaz Sharif comes back and he sort of, becomes, starts the campaign on behalf of the PMNL, what does that mean for Bilawal Bhutto? I think that's going to impact them quite badly because, the PPP as such.
Look, they PMLN and PPP, they were together in the Shahbaz Sharif government essentially to counter Imran Khan. And now that Imran Khan's challenge has been contained, largely contained, they are pursuing their own interests. So PMLN wants to retain its dominance in the largest province, Punjab. PPP wants to retain its dominance in Sindh. But PPP was marginalized in the last two elections completely in Punjab. In PPP would like to regain some seats in Punjab also, especially in southern Punjab, where they have been powerful and influential in the past. Now that clashes with the interests of PMLN. So they are pursuing different interests. That's quite clear, and they will continue to do so. In fact, I may say that the army, which has, which was with these two parties again to counter Imran Khan, is now will pursue its own interests. The army wouldn't like any of the major players to get a decisive majority in the next election, whenever it takes place. They would like to have a splintered parliament, a splintered national assembly, a hung national assembly, where they can create a majority of their own choice with smaller parties which are beholden to them. Those parties they can manipulate and take them to one side or the other side. So they would like to have a hung assembly where they can use those parties to craft a majority of their own choice.
So some of
everyone is pursuing his own interest now.
So some of the splinter groups from the PTI, I mean, they've started off new parties of their own. They would also be then sort of kingmakers at some level.
Look, there are three parties, older parties, which are there with the army. That is PMLQ of Chaudhry Shujat Hussain, then MQM Pakistan, which was created by the army, and then Balochistan Awami Party. The caretaker prime minister belonged to that party. He was one of the founders that way, which was again created. They were defectors from PMLN at the behest of the army who created Balochistan Awami Party. So you have three parties there. Then Istehkam Pakistan, created by Sugar Baron Jahangir Tareen, who is close to the army. And then another party, PTI parliamentarians, created by the former chief minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, again close to the army. So the number of parties which the army can manipulate has grown. And that may help the army, in getting a hung assembly eventually.
So essentially, it's still the army always calling the shots. Nothing else has changed on that part.
No, certainly not. I mean, when Asim Munir became the army chief, for some time he was finding his feet. But post May 9, trouble against the army and attacks on army installations instigated by PTI and Imran Khan, he has consolidated his position and he's calling the shots. The army will need Nawaz Sharif to contain the PTI challenge, Imran Khan challenge in Punjab, because he is the most influential. He is the charismatic leader of his party, not Shahbaz Sharif. So the army has a dilemma here. They need Nawaz Sharif But I don't think they would trust Nawaz Sharif if he were to become a prime minister, the prime minister again. If it comes to a situation where PMLN wins a majority and can form a government, the army's choice may be for Shahbaz Sharif more than
No,
Nawaz
I get
Sharif.
it because Shahbaz Sharif has been
Has
going
been
through.
more pliable. And as you might have heard recently, Nawaz Sharif again started talking in London of accountability against Qamar Javed Bajwa, former
That's
army
right.
chief, and
And Shahbaz
former
rushed back
chief
to London.
justices. And then Shahbaz had to rush back to London and to convince him to quieten down for the time being. This may not be to the liking of the army. How long will he stay quiet? I don't know. Knowing him, as I do, I think he will again try and assert himself if he were in a position to do so. And that would not be to the liking of the army.
So, which means, I mean, as I said, nothing really has changed that much in Pakistan over the last few years. In fact, the army, if anything, has become stronger.
No, it remains front and center in the calculations of all political players. It is playing an important role. It has got a caretaker government of its own choice. It was given greater powers through a law passed by the parliament, of search and carrying out investigations and so on, which it can use against its opponents. It has got a much bigger share in the economic policy making. A special investment facilitation council has been created, and Army Chief is a member of that council along with the Prime Minister. And he's been talking to groups of businessmen from Karachi and Lahore recently to reassure them of an economic plan to improve the economy. And he's talking of bringing investment up to $100 billion from Gulf countries. I don't think anyone is going to throw their money and sink their money in Pakistan. Investment that Pakistan can bring, even by selling its assets, would depend upon its macroeconomic environment, the absorption capacity of the economy, and the law and order situation. All three are bad. So, this is again a mirage being shown by a new army chief to the public, which is suffering because of the economic factors. Similar mirages have been shown by earlier dictators and civilian leaders in the past also.
That's true, sir. So we seem to be sort of running out of time. So let me just ask you a final question. Let's talk about bilateral relations. Since the Kashmir thing, we have downgraded relations and everything. Do you see any chance of it sort of going back to at least what it was before the Kashmir thing happened?
Look, Pakistan took a very unreasonable stand. They didn't have an effective answer to that move by India, 5th of August 2019 move. So Imran Khan took some steps which were, like cutting your nose to spite your face. He suspended trade, for example, which hurts the Pakistani economy more than it hurts the Indian economy. And he also said there could be no dialogue with India until India withdrew that measure. Now, that's not going to happen. Then we heard of some fallback positions saying if India were to restore statehood to Jammu and Kashmir, and then it may be possible to talk. Now, statehood would come when it comes. The government of India is committed to it, but it will not come in response to a Pakistani demand. So I think things have to become clear within Pakistan first. Is it going to be an election? Who comes to power? What is the attitude of Asim Munir? We are not very clear about that at the moment. Or as some people say, will the caretaker government stay on a little longer? It's only when things are stable in Pakistan that something can move forward. At that time, the Pakistanis, there may be a climb down by the Pakistanis, they also realize that they are they painted themselves into a very tight corner. At that time, some possibilities may reopen to stabilize the relationship and more, to add to the ceasefire, which seems to be lasting by and large on the line of control, which was restored in February 2021, and to bring back some things of the past which were lost. By that I mean trade or diplomatic relations at High Commissioner's level, or better communication, transportation facilities, etc. But that's not for now. That's not for the immediate.
But given that it keeps moving from crisis to crisis, I don't think that's likely to happen anytime soon now.
No, as I said, things have to become clear in Pakistan. And look, we shouldn't forget, we are also entering our electoral cycle.
Of course.
So this is not the moment for any forward movement. See clarity what happens in Pakistan when we are through with our elections. Then we'll have to see and assess the situation. And there may be some climb down from Pakistan, as I said, to facilitate greater stabilization of the relationship.
So that was a very informative kind of a discussion we just had. With that, I think we'll close it for today because we're running out of time. Thank you so very much for joining us, sir. I mean, I really appreciate again your taking time out, and we'd like to call you again if time permits for you to sort of discuss what happens next.
Thank you very
maybe
much.
Once
Thank
the elections are over, definitely we'd like to have you to tell us what we can expect next.
Thank you. It was a pleasure answering your questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, former High Commissioner to Pakistan and Ambassador to Uzbekistan, who was talking to us about the recent crisis that is plaguing Pakistan and how it is different from the earlier crisis, which I suppose it really isn't. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode, and you can show us a little love by clicking on the like, share, and subscribe buttons below. I look forward to seeing you again. Until then, goodbye.
These are all self goals scored largely by Pakistan. I don't think they need any adversaries to compound the situation. They have created this mess for themselves. And truly, the Frankenstein's monsters that they have unleashed are now well beyond their control and anybody else's control. So we have to see how General Munir and company, how best they deal with the situation.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale and you are on our evening program, The Gist. And on the program this evening, familiar face on Strat News Global, Ramanathan Kumar, a former intelligence officer, and someone who specializes in terrorism, counter-terrorism, Afghanistan and Pakistan. So welcome to this program once again and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Nitin. It's always a pleasure to be back on your show.
Thank you. So let me start with where is the current situation in Pakistan. Now we have the caretaker government having taken over. The main protagonist over the past 4-5 years in jail, Imran Khan I'm talking about. So what is your first assessment when I ask you, where is Pakistan today?
My first assessment would be, I'm tempted to say, Nitin, that the more things change in Pakistan, the more they appear to be the same, which really, what I mean to say by that is that the army, I think, is really back east, west, north, south, center. The army leads everything, to paraphrase what has been said about the Chinese Communist Party. But I think overall, if you ask me, after all the tumult of the past few months, I think really the civilians have ceded an enormous amount of space and the army is more or less in control of everything. That, I think, is in a nutshell where Pakistan, I think, finds itself today.
But this was inevitable, isn't it? But given the kind of the shenanigans that the politicians indulge in Pakistan and the kind of backdoor entry of the Shahbaz Sharif government took place and Imran Khan was ousted. In the chaos, I think the army always looks like an organization which will bring stability. So in a way, I think Asim Munir would have created the situation himself, or the circumstances became like that. But today, when you look at Asim Munir and his approach to governing Pakistan, is he following the same playbook as his predecessors in the army, or is doing something different?
Well, I think there are two aspects to it. I think in many ways he is possibly following in the footsteps of his predecessor. But he's also, my reading has been that he is perhaps in a sense cut of, made of perhaps sterner stuff than his predecessor. I'll come to that later.
Sure.
But at this point of time, I think it is possibly really the corporate, the institutional interests of the army which is asserting itself irrespective of whoever is the chief. Now, and I think when General Asim Munir took over his post, things were extremely the political situation in Pakistan was in a state of tremendous flux.
Sure.
And slowly, I think, as the dust has begun settling, I think you are seeing signs of the chief, feeling more confident of himself and asserting himself. And you can see that, for instance, in the meeting that he had with the business community.
Sure.
In the last few days.
Right.
And this really has been the offshoot of the formation of something called the Special Investment Facilitation Council in Pakistan.
Right.
This happened at the fag end of the Shahbaz Sharif government just before Parliament was dissolved, 3 days before its scheduled expiry date.
Right.
But the SIFC has been created with an apex committee which includes the army chief and an army officer as its national coordinator, and its objective is to attract investment on a grand scale for Pakistan, as much as $100 billion over the next few years, with the bulk coming from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, of course.
Yeah.
And all this, I believe, or most analysts believe, has the imprimatur of the army chief. He is somehow confident of attracting these investments. He's talking of a blueprint to revive of a grand blueprint to revive the Pakistani economy. It's not going to be easy because there are far deeper structural problems that have to be addressed. And I think Pakistan is a unique country where even the economy, people look to the army to fix it.
Right.
It would hardly happen in any other country. But the fact of the matter is that both the civilian government, the previous government, the last government, was more than eager to put everything in the lap of the army and make a exit with a whimper, so to speak. And I think the army also has been more than eager now under General Munir's leadership to show that it is equal to taking up the challenge and fixing all that needs to be fixed in Pakistan. So it's a combination of both, I would say.
Right. He's also, the army chief has spoken about investments from Saudi Arabia, for instance, to the tune of $25 billion.
That's right.
The US seems to be, sort of backing or supporting, at least keeping Pakistan, the efforts to keep Pakistan afloat. The IMF loan hasn't come through yet, but like you mentioned, Pakistan is still looking to bring in $100 billion of investment. Going by what has happened in the past, do you think these friends of Pakistan, by compulsion or by choice, Saudi Arabia, US, will they play a role in keeping Pakistan afloat or keeping Pakistan going and not let it go under?
So I think people who've been writing about this Special Investment Facilitation Council have mentioned that, it's almost like a similar arrangement was sort of put in place when Musharraf was in power. It was called the CIRC at that point of time, the Commercial and Investment Restructuring Council or some such thing.
Yes.
There again, I mean, there was a lot of hype about attracting investment and so on and so forth. But why I mentioned this is that at that point of time, the international situation was different. The geopolitical situation was different, and Pakistan was in a much more was in a happier place, so to speak, in the sense that it had a certain geostrategic importance at that point of time in the global war on terror, which the Americans were sort of fully backing. They were the initiators of the global war on terror.
Yes.
And so the dollars flowed into Pakistan. But today, I think Pakistan's geostrategic importance is greatly diminished. And so I don't think it's going to be that the dollars are going to flow in as they used to once upon a time. I'm sure countries like, even countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, despite the religious factor and so on and so forth, which obviously I think the present army chief is banking on Islamic solidarity. He has a soft corner for the Islamic fraternity. That is really where he comes from, and that is why I always felt that he is more in the Zia-ul-Haq mold rather than in the Musharraf mold. But I'm sure these countries are also going to put their money where their mouth is. And with the political situation being so uncertain in Pakistan, there is really no incentive, so to speak, for them to invest in. Even the much touted CPEC. In fact, the SIFC is supposed to actually put the CPEC into the shade.
Right.
But look at the CPEC.
Where is it now? Yeah.
Absolutely against the figures of, say, 60 billion, 62 billion and all that used to be talked about in the past. I think the actual figures are possibly something in the range of 20 to 25 billion at the most.
And that too after a decade almost.
Absolutely a decade. And it's hardly led to, any substantial or tangible or visible improvement in the Pakistani economy. Pakistan, in fact, is far weaker economically than it was when the CPEC was talked of as a game changer.
Right.
So if the example of the CPEC is anything to go by, then I think all this talk of the SIFC also is, I would say, I would call it a pipe dream, even at the risk of, sounding a little
euphoric about it.
I mean, yeah.
Something of that kind. But I think you made an interesting point, which I want to take up a little more discussion on, that Pakistan's importance in the geostrategic and geopolitical situation has diminished. And one of the reasons is that it couldn't get the foothold or the kind of control it wanted in Afghanistan, or what it desired, or what it thought it would get 2 years after the Taliban has taken over Afghanistan. It seems that they are fighting much more than any differences of opinion with India. The kind of recriminations and bitterness between the Taliban government, for whatever it is worth, in Kabul and Rawalpindi seems to be a completely unknown entity right now, but it seems to be increasing by the day. And the attacks from TTP are seen as something that the Taliban is doing. So where do you see that factor coming in as far as the Pakistani internal security situation is concerned?
Yes, I mean, I think it has been said that the so-called doctrine or concept of strategic depth has unraveled completely. And You're right. The attacks which are originating from Afghanistan by the TTP and even the ISKP or factions of these organizations, they show no signs of diminishing. On the contrary, they seem to be only increasing with the passage of time. The last month and a half, we've seen there have been major attacks both in Balochistan and of course in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the TTP and in fact a new organization called the Tehreek Jihad Pakistan. There is a feeling that the TJP is possibly a faction or a front for the ISKP.
Okay.
They have claimed claimed responsibility for these attacks.
Right.
And the Pakistanis clearly are clueless, or they are at their wits' end on how to put an end to this. The army chief has made some strong statements. The former defense minister has made some strong statements. They've said that there's going to be they're not going to, unlike the Imran Khan government, there's going to be no leniency or mercy shown to the TTP. There's going to be no dialogue with them. If at all, they're only going to talk to the Taliban, the Afghan Taliban who are running Afghanistan. But all this is only, tough talk. There is really, it has not led to any relief, I would say, for Pakistan.
Sure.
In Afghanistan, of course, there is some talk of there being, a difference of opinion between the pragmatists in Kabul and the hardliners in Kandahar. And the Haibatullah, the Taliban leader, has issued a statement the last month and a half that, those who carry out or at least attacks across the borders are not permissible without the permission of the religious leadership.
Sure.
This is all that has happened in response to whatever Pakistan has done. And despite that statement, the attacks have taken place in Balochistan. The Pakistani army has been targeted.
Right.
Security checkposts have been targeted. So I'm afraid and these are all self goals scored largely by Pakistan. I don't think they need any adversaries to compound the situation. They have created this mess for themselves. And truly the Frankenstein's monsters that they have unleashed are now well beyond their control and anybody else's control. So we have to see how General Munir and company, how best they deal with the situation.
They have to deal with one more situation going forward. Of course, this is a challenge, and it's going to be a major challenge. But how do they restart the political process, or how do they? What do you foresee over the next 6 months? Let's say, if elections are to be held, what is the future of Imran Khan? What is the future of Nawaz Sharif? Can you put some light on that?
Yes, I mean, one can make an attempt.
Yeah,
I think.
Asking you to predict correctly, just informed opinion about it.
My reading would be that, as others have also said, and I tend to agree, that sometime perhaps early next year, we are looking at a possible election. There are, of course, conflicting signals as far as that also is concerned, because, the Election Act of Pakistan was amended just before the Shahbaz Sharif government went out, and the caretaker government was given, or at least some of the limitations on the powers of the caretaker government were removed.
Right.
And that led to, questions as to why was that happening. Did it mean that the caretakers were here for an extended period of time? Those questions still have not gone away. But I think, as others have pointed out, if the caretaker government continues indefinitely, then of course the Pakistani constitution will be well and truly dead and buried. And that may not be very easy because, as we've, I think, discussed once in a previous program also, on a previous show, Article 6 of the Pakistani constitution, now it's not easy to justify a suspension or a complete abrogation of the constitution. Right. So therefore, I think all this leads me to believe that sometime early next year, say January, February or thereabouts, there would be an election. I think clearly the army is hell-bent on making sure that Imran Khan does not contest that election. He, of course, already stands disqualified by the Election Commission of Pakistan.
Sure.
Whether the PTI itself will be allowed to contest or not, I think there is still a question mark about it. As far as Nawaz Sharif is concerned, I'm sure he wants to, he's more than eager to come back and lead from the front, so to speak. But there are legal hurdles. The previous government did try to, amend the powers of the Supreme Court to review its own decisions.
Right.
But the Supreme Court, under the present Chief Justice, struck down that amendment. That was basically meant to, to help Nawaz Sharif to challenge the judgment which disqualified him, or to enable the court to review that judgment.
Yes.
But that hasn't happened. So therefore, Nawaz Sharif's disqualification really still stands.
Yes.
This is a legal hurdle which the PMLN has not yet been able to fully get over. But I think in such a situation, I would tend to agree with those who feel that, the process of political engineering is still very much on, despite whatever claims the army may have made in the past about wanting to get out of politics and all. I think all that is...
it's an eyewash.
It's an eyewash. So I think the Pakistan army would be happiest if they have an extremely weak civilian veneer or a facade, and some King's party. I think there are constant efforts in that direction. If they can engineer or manipulate, engineer a situation where no party really has a strong majority, then they can continue to, I think,
call the shots
from the background, which they've always been comfortable doing.
Yes.
I think that more or less is where all this appears to be heading at this point of time.
I think very well summed up, because it's Pakistan's tragedy that the Pakistani army, which is supposed to protect the country and its people, actually make sure that it never gets to the stage where they can comfortably look for developmental programs and sort of getting the democracy embedded into the country's system. I don't think that is going to happen, given the Pakistani army's inclination to rule from behind, or rule from a remote control or through a remote control. So let's see what happens. But again, as usual, very insightful comments, and giving us an overview of where Pakistan is today. Asim Munir, and just to bring your attention to it, I think you had mentioned in the program that we had done assessing him taking over the Pakistani army, which you had predicted some days ahead of the actual declaration, is that he is right now busy with what he has to do internally. But going forward, India has to also keep a watch on what he does vis-a-vis India. And how India deals with him is going to be a question, maybe another program for that. But thank you very much for the time being.
Thank you very much, Nitin.
Thank you. Pleasure. So that's Ramanathan Kumar speaking to us about the situation in Pakistan. You know where to reach us as far as your feedback and comments are concerned. So do keep sending them. We value them. We also base some of our programs based on these suggestions that come from you. So also subscribe to our YouTube channel if you already haven't done that. And of course, you know where to follow our social media handles. So for the moment, that's all I have. It's goodbye.
Pakistanis, given the fact that they have a huge political problem right now, they have a huge security crisis right now on their hands. They have the economy is completely finished. Given all
Right.
of that, would the Pakistani state be able to handle a default like situation? So I think many countries around the world wanted that, uh, at least Pakistan's friends, they wanted that, we should give some money provided the Pakistanis show some responsibility, which means
Right.
that they also step up to the plate. Now, the traditional Pakistani way of doing thing is take the money, blow it up, go back, and ask for more money. And that's been the revenue model of Pakistan for at least the last few decades. This time around, I think everybody has put a full stop to that.
Hello and welcome to the Gist on Stat News Global. I'm Ramananda Sengupta, and today we are going to be talking about Pakistan. And I can't think of a better person to discuss this with than our guest for today, Mr. Sushant Sareen, who's a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I really appreciate you taking time out for us
Thanks for
today.
having me on your show, Ram.
It's not well. I mean, it's our pleasure. And let me just jump right into it. I've been noticing a sort of flurry of activity between the Americans and Pakistan over the last month, particularly. You had Secretary of State Blinken talking to Bilawal, their foreign minister, some time back for about more than an hour, I believe. Then on the same day, you had their CENTCOM chief talking to the Pakistani army chief, Mr. Munir, General Munir. Is there something to be read into this?
Look, there is something happening, but I think a lot of the analysis is kind of a little overblown on what exactly might be transpiring between these two countries. Uh, to imagine that the United States would have completely lost all interest in a country like Pakistan, I think that's delusional. The US has interests. It'll keep those interests alive, and it will want to have some degree of engagement with the Pakistanis. Now, how deep that engagement is going to be, and what is going to be not just the depth but also the breadth of that relationship, I think it's going to be pretty restricted. It's probably going to be mostly around terrorism issues, some bit on the economy, and the implications of Pakistan's tanking economy on not just Pakistan's security but global security. And I suspect that one of the reasons why the IMF loan was given this time around, virtually at the very last minute, was partly because if you talk to the Europeans, you talk to other people, there are a lot of concerns that, look, if uh, the Europeans, for example, are not able to handle even the refugee flow from the Middle East. But what happens if a country with a population as big as virtually the entire Middle East starts going under? Then how do you stem the flow of refugees into Europe? Not that whether that's a rational fear or irrational, whether there will be millions of people making a beeline for Europe. I think that's a little far-fetched, but try explaining that to the Europeans. So I suspect that has also played some role So I think it's a combination of things: the economy, security, terrorism, and perhaps some element of geostrategy also, on how far the Pakis are going to go with the Russians, the China factor, which is in the region.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a combination of these issues, which is why the Americans are engaging the Pakistanis. But beyond that, if anybody thinks that Pakistan is either going to intercede like it did in the late 60s between the US and China, I don't think you need Pakistan for that anymore, because the Americans have direct lines of communication with the Chinese. I don't think the Americans have the Pakistanis for interceding with anybody. So I don't see much utility for Pakistan going forward. Its only utility right now is its nuisance value. And perhaps to some extent, the Americans are trying to limit that.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's reassuring to know, because if you're talking refugees, we would have been the first to get worried, I suppose, if something happened there in that sense.
No, but Ram, on that, we are in denial. I would agree with you that we need to look at this issue. We need to work out, and I've been saying that uh, for almost 20 years now. I don't want to, blow my own bugle on this, but the fact is that even now, when you start talking to very senior people in government, there is an element of denial that, why would anybody come into India? You know, India is not going to be a place that they're going to be looking forward to becoming. And my question is that, look, if things really go down south really badly, then people will go to whichever place they can find some refuge. And given the fact that all the population centers of Pakistan straddle your border, it's
Right.
much easier to walk across 100 kilometers into India than to walk 5,000 kilometers to Europe or the Middle East or any other place, which are probably far better managed and which will probably be able to stem the flow of the refugees much better than what we can do. Out here, they can come and many of them can simply disappear, and we won't have any idea. How many of us know how
I mean,
many
that's already been happening, right?
or how many Rohingyas have come into this country? So
Right.
that's the way it is. So I think there is an element of denial in India. I'm not saying that it'll happen. What I'm saying is that we should at least game it. We should at least have some
Oh,
preparation that
definitely.
if such a situation was to come, what are we going to do about it? I don't think there is any right now.
In fact, I've got a lot of friends there who keep saying that, how can we get in? Let us know. Can you help us come and, become Indians and all that going on there? So that is already happening. We were talking about the IMF. I know that the IMF gave them what, $9 billion or something over the next nine months.
$3 billion
$3 billion over the next 9 months. Now that's more than what was originally planned. Number one, and of course you've got the Chinese and the Saudis and all those people also giving them money. I don't think any of them are like gifts. I mean, I'm sure they'll want most of it back, but I don't think that will be enough for them to pay back the 24 billion that they owe at the end of the year. What happens then?
No, you're absolutely right. See, much of this money is like, somebody being put on a ventilator and being given a few shots of steroids to keep the guy alive. Bottom line is that there are very, very deep structural problems in the Pakistan economy. Those are not being addressed. To address those, you need a lot of fiscal space to be able to address those, so that you can handle the political economy fallout of those reforms, because that is a lot of disruption, a lot of destruction, and that's easier said than done. We saw in the 90s, and we didn't have to go through too much really, but we saw the kind of resistance there was when reforms were brought in by Mr. Narasimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh. But in Pakistan case, it will become even tougher. So the thing is that this aid which has gone in right now, this basically takes care of the immediate problem, which was that Pakistan was staring at defaulting on its sovereign commitments. And if that had happened, then the scale of the problem would have been manifold more than what it was in the case of Sri Lanka. The Lankans are smart. They went through that torturous phase, and now it seems that there are some signs that their economy is stabilizing. For the Pakistanis, given the fact that they have a huge political problem right now, they have a huge security crisis right now on their hands. They have the economy is completely finished. Given all
Right.
of that, would the Pakistani state be able to handle a default like situation? So I think many countries around the world wanted that, uh, at least Pakistan's friends, they wanted that we should give some money provided the Pakistanis show some responsibility, which means
Right.
that they also step up to the plate. Now, the traditional Pakistani way of doing thing is take the money, blow it up, go back, and ask for more money. And that's been the revenue model of Pakistan for at least the last few decades. This time around, I think everybody has put a full stop to that. And all these countries have been saying that, look, uh, we will help you out. We will help you out some, not entirely, but provided you are back into an IMF program, which means a certain amount of fiscal responsibilities, a certain amount of monetary restrictions which are going to be put so that the economy starts stabilizing. Uh, but like you very correctly said, the Saudis have given them what, something like $2 or $3 billion. The Emiratis
Yeah,
have given none. Uh, the Chinese, I don't think, have given them any new money. All that they have done is rolled over the old debts. Uh,
that's right.
Nothing more than that. They've not pumped in any new money.
Hmm.
So, rolling over old debts is like, what we do when we, loan money to somebody. We say, yeah, theek hai, you give it to us after the next month. Don't give it this
Right.
month, give it next month, give it the month after. It doesn't matter. Because that money is already gone out of my kitty anyways. So I think the Chinese thing is like that. They haven't given any new money. The Saudis have, but even the Saudis have insisted that they go on to an IMF program. The
Hmm.
Saudis, Emiratis, and the Qataris are also eyeing certain assets in Pakistan, and they're saying that why don't you sell off these assets, and uh, we can that way you lower the burden of returning the money. So there is
Right.
a kind of a fear that there'll be a loot sale of Pakistani assets to many of these
Hmm.
countries. The airports, for example, are already being outsourced. The ports are being outsourced. The main Karachi port, Gwadar is a non-starter for now. But the main
Right.
Karachi port, I think almost 80-85% of it is probably going into the hands of the UAE. So I think
Hmm.
that kind of a thing is happening. But again, I don't think that's going to be enough to pull the Pakistanis out of the economic rut they are in.
It's interesting that you mentioned the fact that they're selling off the sort of family heirlooms in a way, because I think their Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has already spoken about how they're giving away some 28 sort of programs to the same people that you mentioned, the UAE and the Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, the first thing that I saw them doing immediately after the loan was announced is to go and invest in a flag which has to be bigger than the Indian flag, and it costs a few hundred crores. So, I mean, I don't know how you're going
Uh,
to make them change that kind of a thing.
no, you can't. You can't. And that is at the root of the problem, isn't it? For example, they've just approved, they already in a very, the fiscal hole is really terrible. Just I think
Hmm.
yesterday they raised fuel prices, which they should have, which is all right. But look, what many people forget is that just 2 or 3 weeks back, their finance minister was a complete idiot, Ishaq Dar. He'd actually
Right.
reduced the fuel prices, and was doing a lot of chest thumping and patting himself on the back that I've reduced fuel prices. Now, look at how the Modi government has acted. For the longest, even when fuel prices have reduced internationally, they maintained the level, because
Hmm.
in economics there is something called expectations. The public
Right.
expectation is okay that now, for example, in Delhi the fuel prices are around $98 or something to a liter.
Right.
That's now part of my calculation, right? If it comes down,
Hmm.
it's like a windfall for me. If it goes up marginally. But
Right.
that gap bit, the government acquires enough revenue to ensure that if there's a temporary spike in oil prices, they don't need to raise the prices, so they can maintain
Got
a
it.
degree of stability. The Pakistanis, on the other hand, have done something completely different. So they reduce the prices and then they have to raise them again because of international prices, and that
Right.
kind of creates a big problem for them. So one is that now and they don't have the fiscal space to subsidize, or take that hit onto the government books and say, okay, fine, we have enough resources from which we will handle this rise in fuel prices. On the other hand, because they're going to go into election and they need to, woo all those legislators and everybody else, and there's a lot of political confabulations going on, a lot of jod tod, as we call it, going on. Uh, they have announced developmental schemes for parliamentarians, which will help them woo voters.
Right.
Now, that is fiscal irresponsibility of the worst kind, which
Absolutely.
is understandable from a political angle, but from a purely economic angle, it is not. Now, assuming that you did not spend this money, you used it to, provide some cushion to the people, you could have done that. But, if you have Ishaq Dar, a man who's like a good, accomplished chartered accountant, can only balance books and fudge figures, then you have what you have in Pakistan right now. So a flag, for example, it's great vanity project, gets them nothing, spends a lot of money which could have been used much more effectively elsewhere. But that's Pakistan for you.
The other thing that I was sort of, intrigued by is that when we spoke about, Shahbaz Sharif not giving away, well, putting out these 28 projects to the Saudis and the thing. One of the things that he remarked at that time was that, if these things take off, they will probably get us more than the 28 billion that we are supposed to get from the Chinese, that CPEC. And at the same time, you had, their Hira Rabbani Kar. She was talking at some, TV interview where she said that, the American, or rather the Western attempt to, de-link from China is a big thing which is going to change the total world's, dynamics. But at the same time, we can't do that. Obviously, we are talking to them very aggressively and very sort of, kind of a thing. I'm wondering, is there some messaging going out to the Chinese?
I'm not so sure. I think they're too deep in the hawk to the Chinese, number one, economically. And secondly, I think in terms of political influence and in terms of, the Chinese involvement in the Pakistan military, China acquires today the place which the Americans did in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s.
Right.
Today, that same status which the Americans enjoyed at that point of time is the status which the Chinese enjoy today. So think that, the Pakistanis are, they can be pretty foolish. I don't deny that. And they will try and, play this game of, hedging their bets, trying to balance out things between the Americans and the Chinese so that they don't get caught in between. Use the Americans to try and get something more out of the Chinese, use the Chinese to get something out of the Americans. Whether they are successful in it or not is a different matter. But I'm telling you, the way the Pakistani mindset goes, right? They'll try all of them. But I don't think they are going to do anything to rile the Chinese very badly at this point in time, or for the foreseeable future. I don't see that as a possibility. Baki, for the rest of it, Shahbaz Sharif and all these guys, they're these wet dreams which they have. Now, yesterday, another clownish minister started talking about, I was seeing a clip. He's talking about Apple, Microsoft, and I think Google, that these three companies are worth $6 trillion. And just the soil from which minerals will come out of Pakistan is worth $6 trillion. So that means Pakistan is the richest country in the world. The kind of
Right.
nonsense, the kind of snake oil they sell to their own people, the kind of bullshit they say. Is the same Shahbaz Sharif when I think it was 2010 or 2011. He announced that we
Mhm.
found this huge reservoir of gold in a place called Cheniot, right?
Right.
And enough gold that we'll beat everybody hollow. Then somebody came up with this, that this is 100-year-old study. There's nothing out there, right? So that whole, for a couple of days, people like Hamid Mir and the rest of this bunch, people who
Mhm.
thought that cars can run on water, these kind of
Yeah.
clowns were really celebrating even at that time. Then you had Imran Khan saying that, we've discovered oil and maybe in a couple of days I'll announce this huge, massive oil discovery off the coast of Karachi.
Mhm.
Nothing out of it, right? So, they earlier there was Rico Dake, that Pakistan is like the Saudi Arabia of copper and I don't know whatever else is there.
Right.
Nothing's
Mhm.
really come out of it so far. When it comes out, we'll see. Abhi tak to kuch nahi aaya. There's nothing right now. So,
Mhm.
so I think again they've got into this that we'll sell off this. Those investments will come in. The same kind of nonsense which they've spoken about CPEC will change the destiny of our country. All that it has done
Mhm.
is it has indebted Pakistan even more to the Chinese. There is nothing that they
True,
have to
it's-
show. There's nothing in terms of productivity. There's nothing in terms of industrial production. There's nothing in terms of anything really.
Mhm.
So there is this typical snake oil which is constantly sold. A lot of people get impressed with it, but how does it work on the ground? It doesn't. There's nothing on the ground.
That's true. But another thing that I've been noticing for a while, I mean, ever since I sort of started trying to understand these guys, is that whenever they have a huge crisis, the first thing that they come and say is that if the government falls and if there is instability, some mad mullah will probably lay their hands on a nuclear weapon and ask, let's see how loud a bang this baby makes. And so it's best that you support me, otherwise there's going to be mayhem in the whole region. And if that fails, usually that hasn't failed, the next thing is that, look, you guys are not helping us, so we need to do something. So I might just give my nuclear arsenal or secrets to the Saudis or somebody. That's the next step that I've noticed that they do. How long do you think they can play that game? I mean, is that a
Yeah, I think this game was summed up in Strobe Talbot's book, if I mistake it not, where
Mhm.
he said, the Pakistanis are past masters. When they sit across the table, they negotiate with a gun pointed at their own head to scare the
Yeah.
negotiator. So basically, you can sum up what you said in one sentence. That's their negotiating strategy. They've
Uh-huh.
been doing it to death, and I would say fairly successfully, not just with the West, but
Mhm.
they've done it with India as well. Whether it was Ayub Khan, help me, otherwise the mullahs will take over. Bhutto comes,
Right.
help me, otherwise, the right wing, the army, mullahs, everybody will take over. Every single guy has sold us that lemon also, right? And we have
Mhm.
bought it. There are enough people in this country. I don't want to name them, but I'm sure you realize who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Enough
I
loonies
know
out
who.
here,
Mm.
loony liberals, as I call them, uh, who don't understand anything about the damn place. And these are guys who will just keep, spreading this nonsense that no, we must help
Right.
Pakistan, stuff like that. The
Mhm.
same thing happens in the West. And
Mhm.
and I think what is happening, however, given the kind of toughness that the IMF and the Western countries have shown this time around, I
Mhm.
suspect that that game is more or less run its course. A lot of people are now saying that yes, I think the time has come to call Pakistan's bluff, and that is a scary thing for the Pakistanis because look, this business that okay, we'll go and sell our nuclear weapons, right?
Right.
The day they do it, you wait and see what happens to them. The country will not
Mhm.
survive. There are enough forces in the world who will make sure that this country folds over, regardless of the cost. In terms of the human cost or uh, whatever other costs they have to be paid, they'll make mincemeat out of them. I'm sure the
Uh-huh.
Pakistanis also realize it. So I think so that bluff is going to be called sooner rather than later. It's already being called, because this time IMF pushed them right till the wire, and gave them no
Right.
concession, none whatsoever.
Right.
So I think that strategy is not going to work for very long.
I think we're running out of time a little bit, but let me just ask you something that we should have, talked about a bit earlier on this. Elections are happening, and Shahbaz Sharif recently
Are
said that.
Are they happening?
Sorry?
Are they
Well, that's
happening?
he said that he said that end of the month I'll hand over power to the sort of caretaker government and all that, even though they are fighting over who will head that government still. But what I was wondering is, he then made some statements about how he's willing to work with India for development of the region. And, along with statements like, if we win, my brother Nawaz will come in and take over as PM and stuff like that. Is something that can be just handed over. But, regardless of whoever wins or whoever loses in this election, do you think anything will change in our bilateral relationship? Or should we even expect that?
Ram, I'm very skeptical about that changing. You have to understand the context in which Shahbaz Sharif said what he said. I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. He was addressing a conference in which a lot of international delegates had also come. So he was trying to show that, look, we are very reasonable people. We are people who want good relations. We want connectivity. We want, the entire shebang. That's what he was selling to them. And he was probably bringing in the India factor as, something to say that, look, we are the guys, we want to do this, but, the Indians, it's up to them. We are a nuclear weapon power. Have you ever heard Modi talk about, I'm a nuclear weapon power? We have so many problems with the Chinese. Have you ever heard any Indian say that we are a nuclear weapon state? So that typical nonsense which the Pakistanis keep spouting, Shahbaz Sharif comes out with that. But we are very responsible country. We cannot even imagine. So at one level, you continuously bring in nuclear flashpoint, which is a kind of a threat which you are using. And then you say, but we cannot even imagine that something like this will happen. So this is the kind of nonsense these guys keep spouting all the time. And but he was trying to put this best foot forward to the international investors, audience, which was there. This is one. Secondly, if at all they were genuinely serious, then these kind of proposals, Ram, don't come in these kind of conferences. These kind of things happen quietly. There's quiet diplomacy, and then you take certain steps, so that it comes out in the public.
Right.
So this business of speaking through the media, they had a finance minister before, Ishaq Dar, who had tweeted something and expected that the government of India will change its policy on the basis of that guy's tweet. And he didn't last in his own job for more than a couple of weeks after that.
Right.
So do you think the government of India will respond to this? But for example, I would be extremely surprised. Actually, maybe I should not be, because government of India also moves in mysterious ways. But I would be extremely surprised, if the government of India was going to respond to a proposal which comes, like this, which comes from a prime minister who's virtually on his way out. He's probably going to be, from what we are hearing, by the 8th or the 9th of August, he's probably going to dissolve the assembly, is not going to be prime minister anymore. Now, whether elections will happen, not happen, when they will happen, there's a lot of uncertainty about that. Ideally, they should happen not later than November. But now Shahbaz Sharif yesterday said something to the effect that, electoral roll should be on the basis of the new, the new census, so that delimitation and all will take place, which means that elections will get delayed and they will probably not happen before March, April next year, because it'll take them a few months before they can get down to doing that. And if it is March, April, then who knows whether elections will actually happen also or not. So there's a lot of uncertainty on that count. And since we are talking about Pakistan, there is no constitutional bar, as constitution can be interpreted the way they want it to. So, so that's the way it is. So I don't think there's any government in India who will want to talk to them seriously now at this stage. Maybe a couple of months earlier, they could have still tried to put things, start putting things back on the rails. But at this stage, I have a lot of doubts. They might be having some
Mhm.
channels of communication with the army. Maybe, I don't
Right.
know,
Mhm.
because that's the permanent establishment. But I don't think they're going to waste their time on Shabazz Sharif or anybody else.
Hmm. That's a bit of a somber note, but that's also, I mean, the truth as it was. I think we'll have to wrap it up now. I'm already getting signals from our team that we are shooting over the limit. But I do have a few questions which I'll probably catch up with you next time. And I thank you for the coming at such short notice. So I hope you will come and join us again because I
Certainly,
think
always a
and
pleasure being with you guys.
thank you.
Yeah.
That was Mr. Sushant Sareen talking to us about Pakistan in his own sort of inimitable style. I do hope you enjoyed the conversation. And if you have, don't forget to like, share the links below. And I look forward to seeing you all again the next time. Thank you very much.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to the Gist on Strat News Global. Good evening, I'm Surya Gangadharan, and it seems the army is back in the saddle in Pakistan after a short interval. We find that they appear to have strengthened their position. They now have an interim government installed, largely comprising people they trust. They've also, of course, there's no certainty over when elections will happen. That's something still out there in the future. The passage of two bills is seen as strengthening the army's control over the civilian sphere. And of course, we also have the crackdown on Imran Khan's partymen, also activists and many others. So that's the current situation. I have my guest this evening, Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal. He was India's High Commissioner to Pakistan way back in 2012 and has seen Imran Khan's rise from the very, very beginning. Sir, good evening. Glad to have you.
Good evening. Good to be with you, Surya.
So, how do you see what's the big takeaway as far as the army is concerned? Is it in charge now? Is General Asim Munir firmly in the saddle?
Yes, I think so. It's nothing new. As you know, army has been in control in Pakistan directly or behind the scenes. Asim Munir was appointed under some controversial circumstances. He was to retire 2 days before the post fell vacant, so there was some tinkering with rules and so on to retain him. And I think he was lying low initially, trying to consolidate his position within the army, although he kept his interest in politics also from behind the scenes. And the May 9 events after Imran Khan's first arrest, violent events against army establishments, gave him an opportunity to consolidate his position. He got the support of all corps commanders by calling their conference. He's dismissed nearly 20 senior officers, including a lieutenant general who were seen to be leaning towards Imran Khan. He has decimated Imran Khan's party. All the army remains central to the calculations of all political parties. The Shabazz Sharif government got bills passed before it left to give army greater power in civilian administration, including trials by military courts for the agencies to carry out search operations and so on. Also, a bill to legitimize their role in the economy of Pakistan. I think that's very important. They not only legalized it for the future, but they also said any activities carried out in the past would also be legitimate. That's because some courts had questioned from time to time Army's deep involvement in various sectors of the economy. So yes, Asim Munir has consolidated his own position within the army. And the army is, of course, again back in the seat where it's controlling things. As you know, the caretaker prime minister who has been appointed, Anwarul Haq Kakar, he's beholden to them. His name was suggested by the army. It was nowhere on the scene. Most of the members of his cabinet have been close to the army. So as I said, they are in control.
So politically, what is the game plan now? What do they want to do?
Look, everyone, if you are asking me about the army, they have all cooperated. That is the principal actors, PMLN, PPP, and the army, in order to get rid of Imran Khan. Now he's under arrest again, and his deputy Qureshi is also under arrest, and some other members of the party are in detention. Having done that, I think they all have different aims. PMLN would like to have, sustain its primacy in Punjab. PPP would also, it has remained confined only to Sindh in the last two elections. So it would like to gain some seats in Punjab, particularly in southern Punjab. So their interests vary. As far as the army is concerned, I think they would like to have a situation where they can control things in an assembly. They would like to have an assembly where, it's not a clear mandate for anyone. And with the help of the smaller parties beholden to them, they can craft a majority of their choice. That's because even though they have cooperated with all these guys, PPP, PMLN, but because of the past history, they don't trust them completely.
Yeah.
Nawaz Sharif will probably come back. He is needed because he's the only one who carries the potential to neutralize Imran Khan's popularity to some extent. But I don't think the army would trust Nawaz Sharif completely because of what has happened in the past. Time and again, he has become prime minister. So I think they are working on this to have some splinter parties. So many members of PTI have gone to a party floated by Jahangir Khan Tareen, who had bankrolled Imran Khan's campaigns, but who fell out with him. He's been known to be very close to the army, has a lot of influence in southern Punjab, can gain some seats. Then again, the former chief minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Khattak, he has floated another party. He's also known to be close to the army. So there are these two new parties. If they get a few seats, and then you have parties already beholden to the army, MQM, PMLQ, whatever seats they get, or Chaudhry Shujat Hussain, then Balochistan Awami Party, to which the caretaker prime minister belonged until he was appointed prime minister. That seems to be the game plan of the army. So all actors are now acting in their own interest, and let's see what happens.
What about Imran Khan? What do they intend to do with him? What would you presume they'll want to do with him?
I think they would like to keep him in detention at least till the elections, to push him out of the political equation, push him and his party and his colleagues who are loyal to him. So he's been kept in very, very bad conditions in the Attak jail. That has come out in newspapers and so on. The idea probably is to break his will and to convince him to leave Pakistan and go somewhere. Otherwise, of course, they would like to get him convicted, disqualified from holding office or holding the position of the president of his party. That has already happened. In fact, the Election Commission of Pakistan has declared him disqualified from holding those positions. But the army would like to get some more convictions to put him out of the political equation firmly. Let's see how long he can hold on.
Do you anticipate some kind of exile like Benazir Bhutto in the past, even Nawaz Sharif?
Yeah, that would be their preference. That he leaves. He is no longer in Pakistan. But then they have to break his will. Instead of his continuing to be in the prison, he's given this option and he takes it. I don't know what is happening. All that we know is that he's being held under horrible conditions in the prison, from whatever has come out. And a judge who went to inspect testified to that. So I think that all that is an attempt to break his will and to convince him to leave. That would be their first preference. But if he doesn't crack and if he decides to go through imprisonment, then they would like to keep him in prison at least till the elections are done and dusted.
Mhm. Do you sense that the army is kind of running out of political allies? You know, the major parties are people they've worked with before and they don't trust them. They're not coming up with new ginger groups. I
Yeah,
mean,
that element is there. You see, one by one, all the proteges of the army have fallen out with it,
yeah.
starting from Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to Nawaz Sharif to now Imran Khan. So, in that sense, they don't have some principal actors to count on. As I said, they cooperated with PMLN and PPP, etc., but I don't think they trust them fully. That's why they are trying to tinker with the smaller parties and to craft a majority of their own choice. But the fact remains, in spite of all the criticism of the army, open criticism, which was unprecedented, one hadn't
Yeah.
seen it in the past, the army remains front and center in the country's political equation. That's unfortunate for democratic tendencies in Pakistan. And as I said, they remain central to the calculations of all political parties. So down the line, if these actors are not pliable, they can pick up someone else with a degree of charisma and build him up, as they built up Imran Khan 2011 onwards. So I don't think they have their choices have become difficult, but have they run out of their choices? I don't think that's so.
Mhm. So, what is it about this army that makes it the way it is? I mean, in Bangladesh, the army stepped back, and although it's like a clone of the Pakistani army, but in this case, the generals don't want to give up. They don't want to let go, and continue. Even though they know it's not looking good.
Well, it's a strong stranglehold that had continued from the beginning. And the army has used the India bogey and external threat within courts to sustain its primacy in the Pakistani polity. That has given it a certain position in the Pakistani polity. They are deeply entrenched in various walks of economic life. They have a vast business empire, all the three services, notably the army. Then, of course, they haven't had a leader who could sort of lead the public in a revolt against the army, a mass revolt, so to say. I mean, Nawaz Sharif, each time he left, no such thing happened. Then
Yeah.
Imran Khan on May 9, when he was arrested the first time, there was violent agitation by supporters and army establishments were attacked. But even that was not a mass revolt. That was also his supporters, smaller groups acting in various places. And please note that after his second arrest, nobody has moved. The people
Yeah.
who can mobilize within his party were all under arrest, and nothing happened at all. And he's in jail now. He hasn't been given relief by the Islamabad High Court, where he had made an appeal. And yet, there is no mass uprising or anything of that kind. So I would also say that it's lack of a very, very charismatic leader who can lead that kind of revolt. Imran Khan thought he could do it, but you see his plight. So that has helped the army to hold on to a position of power, and I don't think they'll give it up easily. As I often say, if civil-military imbalance is redressed in Pakistan, it will be a process and not an event. It is a slow trend that will continue, and I think the criticism that the army faced in the recent months is a part of that process. But to expect it to suddenly give its entrenched position all the perks and privileges, I think that's unrealistic.
Do you expect elections next year, and when?
PMLN has been very keen to delay them as much as they can. Because Nawaz Sharif, I think, when he comes back, it will be sometime in September when the current Chief Justice is gone and the incoming Chief Justice is favorable to them. So they need some time to sort of regroup and reinforce their support base within Pakistan. And so therefore, uh, instead of the National Assembly completing its term on August 12, they dissolved it 3 days earlier. Now, if it completes its term, you get 60 days for elections. If it dissolved earlier, you get 90 days. So they gain 30 days there. And then I think there are signs, clear signs, that the caretaker administration may stay longer. A bill was passed to give them power to exercise, more control than is done normally by a caretaker. Caretaker government is there to take care of day-to-day needs of administration. But here a bill has been passed to give them an authority to deal with more substantive issues on the pretext of running the economy and so on. Secondly, I think what Shahbaz Sharif did was just before he laid down office, he called a hurried meeting of the Council of Common Interest. This has chief ministers and others in it, including the Prime Minister, and approved the latest census of 2022. Now that means you require demarcation of the constituencies again. And the Election Commission says it will take 4 months. So that takes us to December, January. So the earliest elections can take place will be in February, March. And I think the army would like the caretaker setup to stay there and to deal with some harsh issues, including harsh economic steps, etc., to put things on the rails. Whether they would let elections happen then is also not clear. The caretaker prime minister is their own man. The cabinet has most of the people are beholden to the army. So I think earliest in February, March, I would say March, more like March. Whether it would be prolonged further, something like Bangladesh, where, the army propped up a government which stayed on almost for 2 years, if I remember correctly. And this Bangladesh model within courts has been spoken of in Pakistan quite often. Each time a civilian government seems to be failing, say, bring technocrats backed by the army and let them do the job. So possibly they could be delayed further if the army believes that it needs some more time to build conditions in which it can have a legislative assembly of its own liking, where it can craft a majority, instead of giving a strong mandate to any political actor.
Do you think PTI is finished? Imran Khan is finished?
Imran Khan, I won't say, unless, they kill him. I'm not saying that that is something that they are likely to do in this day and age, probably a Bhutto kind of execution. But then, Benazir had also died blaming the army. So if he lives, I don't think you can write off any politicians. Shahbaz Sharif and company, Nawaz Sharif. Shahbaz couldn't have made a deal with the army without blessings of Nawaz Sharif. Someone like Nawaz Sharif makes a deal to get rid of Imran Khan. Tomorrow, another general may come and he may be looking for someone, and he says, okay, Imran Khan is sufficiently pliable now, he's been softened in the jail, etc. He's had bad experience. And Imran Khan also says, okay, I'm willing to work with you. He could come back again. So don't say that he's written off forever.
So where would you see Bilawal Bhutto?
Bilawal Bhutto, as I said, their aim is, of course, he tried his best, even as they were part of PDM. PDM, as you know, was floated with two aims. One, to neutralize Imran Khan, or at least to push him out of power. B, to oppose the rule of the army or control of the army. You remember those statements made by Nawaz Sharif from London against the army and generals, Bajwa, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But ironically, it has left office now, strengthening the hands of the army because of those bills which it got passed and the conditions that it created. Now, Bilawal all along, PPP was trying to cozy up to Bajwa's. And they would try and do the same with Asim Munir. Although, as I said, I don't think the generals, would trust anyone completely. Their first aim would be to expand beyond Sindh, because last two elections, they were reduced to a party confined only to Sindh, controlling the Sindh Legislative Assembly and also getting seats in the National Assembly at the federal level, only from Sindh, largely. Now, they would like to get some. They used to have a base in Punjab. They would like to get some seats, at least in southern Punjab and so on. At the very least, expand their strength in the parliament and then see what kind of legislative National Assembly is there, what kind of seats every party has, and they try and maximize their goings. As I pointed out earlier, army remains central to the calculations of all parties. So therefore, all will try post-elections to cozy up to them and to get prime ministership. Unless it is PMLN under Nawaz Sharif that gets a solid majority, in which case he may not yield easily. But the army, I think, is trying everything to ensure that that kind of contingency doesn't arise.
And the religious parties, where would you place them?
Religious parties, look, they have never got a very large percentage of votes. They have been 10% or thereabouts or even less. They are more potent because of their street power, because of their nuisance value for the authorities and for the government in power, for the army and so on. And secondly, they have had a lot of influence because both the army and civilian leaders have used the religious parties to their own ends. Army to perpetrate terrorism abroad and to serve their own ends within Pakistan and so on. So I think the army, if they find that in addition to these splinter small parties that I spoke of earlier, they also want to bring in religious parties somewhere to cut into Nawaz Sharif's majority and so on. They may use them that way. But I don't see them gaining enough seats to have kind of a solid number of their own, unless the army wills it that way. And so far, there is no sign. I think they realize that these guys are very troublesome. So while they are using them, they also need to be kept in their place.
That was Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, former High Commissioner to Pakistan, talking about the long arm of the Pakistan Army. That's all we have for you tonight. Thank you for joining us. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media, including Twitter. Good night. Thank you.
We should be prepared with our own response mechanism to deal with any such situation which is created for us on the borders. And my belief is that Pakistan remains highly unsatisfied with the rapidly improving situation in Kashmir, and I'm afraid there are elements within our country also, and there are elements in Pakistan who continue to believe that Kashmir is a powder keg which can explode.
Hello and welcome to The Gist on Strat News Global. Good evening, I'm Surya Gangadharan. Welcome to another edition of The Gist. This evening, we are going to look at a topic that may be a hit with some of our viewers. We're basically focusing on Pakistan and its nuclear strategy. So, Pakistan and nuclear strategy both. Briefly, our Western neighbor has unveiled some changes to its nuclear doctrine that, in the view of experts in India, could be highly destabilizing. So exactly what are some of these changes? I have a small graphic coming up. The changes are broadly in line with Pakistan's quest for achieving full spectrum deterrence, presumably against India, of course. This would cover horizontal deterrence, meaning all three services would have a variety of nuclear weapons at their disposal. It also includes vertical deterrence, meaning destructive yields suitable for strategic, operational, and tactical levels. This apparently would give Pakistan strategic shield, blunting India's conventional superiority. So that's basically what we have. I'd like to bring in my guest at this point, Brigadier Arun Sehgal. He has co-authored a piece on this along with Manpreet Sethi and Admiral Shikhande. And he's a researcher. He's with the Delhi Policy Group, a very well-known think tank based in Delhi. So welcome, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Sir, my first question. Full spectrum deterrence, something Pakistan has been talking about for quite some time. So exactly what is new in what they have now come out with?
Okay. Let me highlight a couple of important issues. Uh, General Kadwai's speech has come about in the backdrop of the very, very destabilized internal and political situation, political and economic situation in Pakistan. There are
Excuse me.
people.
Excuse me. Khalid Kidwai is the was
He
the head
was
of strategic plans.
he was the earlier head of the Strategic Plans Division. Now he's an advisor in the Strategic Plans Division. So he has a formal role in the Pakistan Nuclear Command Authority, ARBIT, and advisory role.
Okay, great, great.
The second issue, important issue to note is there are two perspectives bothering Pakistan. One is the internal situation, which is critical, as we understand in political
Yeah.
terms, economic terms, and also the way there is a great turbulence within the army itself. The second issue, which is much more this thing, is the Pakistanis are starting to believe there's a huge conventional asymmetry developing between those two countries. India is fortifying itself, building capacities, bringing in new critical technologies, the Arihant Patrol, the way we have handled China, our capacity development, and the fact that we have now become an important player in the global strategic play and wooed by almost all important powers is giving them a sense of nervousness as to India is getting too big, and it is something that is cause of concern, particularly in the political and military establishment, as the consequences of that. So, the statement of the full spectrum deterrence, which was made by Kidwai and then examined in detail in terms of vertical and horizontal deterrence, which you talked about, was
Yeah.
basically to reassure his own countrymen that
Hmm.
the nuclear weapons remain an important and a credible capability for the security of the nation. And second, even more importantly, is to send a message to us to say that Pakistan is there, is your neighbor, you can't ignore it, and
Hmm.
therefore, if push comes to shove, we have the capacity and the capability of dealing with you. So this is these statements are not made just for a seminar purpose. They carry a strategic messaging. So
Mhm.
from our perspective, the strategic messaging that they are giving us is that A, it is developing a large arsenal, as we are all aware. It got about 170 nuclear weapons as per the estimates of the Federation of Atomic Scientists and others. Also, he is now also developing his triad, and the triad which is developing is both his air as well as the sea triads are essentially very highly destabilizing. They are not fully developed. The command and control is loose. We have no idea how they will function in a situation of a crisis.
Hmm.
So this is what, when we saw this piece, and we were about at that particular point in time going for our 6 monthly nuclear track 2 dialogue with the Pakistanis, we felt that this is something which is new, and this is something which is highly destabilizing, and coming particularly in the backdrop of what is happening in Ukraine and the Russians trying to use the similar kind of language. We said that it is important that the both the people in the subcontinent and largely also people in the global world, they understand that what is happening.
Okay, is this also something that the Pakistanis are throwing up to draw the American attention?
Yes, yes, it's important. It's also important to highlight that they are trying to say that the situation in the subcontinent is unstable. There is a problem in Kashmir. They're also wanting to highlight the fact that as you notice how they reacted to our meeting in G20 meeting in Srinagar, and what happened, the tamasha that took place at Goa, and no chance is ever left in which the Kashmir is being brought out. The fact of the matter they're trying to say is that while you cozy up with the Indians, do not forget the fact that there are two nuclear neighbors who are who have a very, very strained relationship, and this is something that is potentially destabilizing.
So nothing new there really. It's kind of a lot of old wine in new bottle.
No. We from the perspective of strategic messaging, we have to take two, three issues into account. First fundamental point is, apart from what he has said, though, there is a nuance which is being done, and it was done in our track 2 meeting by a very senior Pakistani nuclear official. The message given was that there is no place for conventional war under nuclear overhang. Basically, discounting the fact that if there is a major crisis or a major strike in India, the Indian perspective of having created or curated, as we have used the word, a possible deterrence reaction vis-a-vis Pakistan to such a this thing, they are trying to close that gap. So basically saying Balakot is not feasible now, because what has happened at Balakot time was that we had created under the nuclear shadow a response mechanism to deal with this cross-border terror. So they want to convey a message that this is not possible, because we as a weaker nation, should we feel conventionally deterred, we will have no option but to go in for escalation, and that escalation would be nuclear. The second message is that the escalation in Indo-Pak scenario will not be in terms of from conventional stages of conventional action reaction cycle, and then percolating to nuclear thing. They are now trying to tell us is that, hey friends, is going to be a vertical escalation. So there will be a vertical escalation, and vertical escalation means is that the so-called full spectrum deterrence at each level of the deterrence has a nuclear calculation figured into it. So point to note is that the nuclear weapons are a currency of strategic stability, even at the lowest level, even at the tactical level. Ideally, from Indian perspective, this is nothing new. You rightly said so. It's nothing new. But the problem is like this: is that we all have to understand that the nuclear command authority in Pakistan, unlike in India, is not civilian controlled. Civilians only have a notional control. You have a prime minister who's hardly a prime minister. I mean, in the sense that he hardly escalates, hardly exercises political power. So he might be the notional head of the executive side of the nuclear command authority, but the reality of the whole thing is that the NCA is managed and controlled by the military through the SPD. So here the problem starts occurring. The problem is the misjudgment and perceptual misjudgment. Now this is where the problem is, and that's what we are trying to highlight is. So, and the second element, which is also equally important, is this: that the Pakistani nuclear hawks, I will call them nuclear hawks. There are like him and another gentleman called Mr. Nadeem Karzai, etc. They have made themselves to believe that India's punitive response is a hogwash. They believe that India will not have the political will to launch major strikes, and if it will not launch major strikes, or end up in an action-reaction cycle of low-yield tactical nuclear weapon kind of usage, to that extent, that creates an issue or creates a situation for Pakistan where it can be used as a conflict termination strategy through global pressure to ensure that it does not escalate into a large-scale nuclear war, and that is provides Pakistan the intrinsic security from India, in their perception, greatly nullifying the larger uh, asymmetric potential or India's positive asymmetric capabilities or India's military capabilities. So you have to see it from those perspectives.
Do you think the Pakistanis read us right? I mean, given that it is largely military dominated and military driven, um, are they able to read us properly? We have that issue with the Chinese. Do they read us in that
Oh,
sense?
okay. It's a very interesting question. Let me try. See, that's a problem area. Uh, Pakistanis believe that Indian state is run by quote unquote Hindu nationalist coterie. In one case, we were also told that you have put a picture of Mahabharata in the new parliament. Pardon, mark my words. You put a picture of Mahabharata. So you want to create an India of the past with all its glory, quite akin to what the Middle Kingdom syndrome of the Chinese. Please understand. It's not whether they're right or wrong. It is, you asked me a question, I'm answering the psyche. The psyche is this. Psyche is, as the differential grows, the feeling of isolation, feeling of not able to respond, and feeling of how much can we continue to milk the terrorism card continues is increasing. It is for this reason he's now trying to say is, boss, there is no simply scope for conventional war. If it comes through and we find ourselves in a situation of adverse situation, we will be not hesitate to use nuclear weapons. But I must tell you this, that I have done about 50 to 20 nuclear exercises, including about 5-7 with the Pakistanis. In none of those situations, the Pakistanis had the gumption to use nuclear weapons. So a rational actor syndrome will tell me it is not so. But then the situation now is that India, because of the China factor and the steps we have taken at Atmanirbharta and with our recent defense cooperation engagement with the United States, France, and other people, including Israel, and our own capabilities in precision strike and long range vectors and cruise missiles and etc., is providing is creating a deep sense of insecurity in a nation whose entire ethos is anti-Indian. This is the part we have to understand. The ethos of Pakistan is anti-Indian. So this is where the whole problem starts coming in, and this is where the miscalculation starts coming in. That's the point I'm trying to make, sir.
And do you think we read them properly?
I think I cannot say for the political establishment, but I can say is the strategic establishment. Strategic establishment is tactically engaged with Pakistan. The strategic establishment, in my view, do not take the larger strategic picture of what is driving the Pakistani thinking. Idea is not to get overawed. Idea is not to get challenged by what they do. The idea is to read them properly. Something which we did not do even for the Chinese, and I'm afraid, and we should not make that same mistake twice. Uh, we should be prepared with our own response mechanism to deal with any such situation which is created for us on the borders. And my belief is that Pakistan is strictly remains highly unsatisfied with the rapidly improving situation in Kashmir. And I'm afraid there are elements within our country also, and there are elements in Pakistan who continue to believe that Kashmir is a powder keg which can explode. My personal view is that Pakistanis largely have accepted Article 370s as a fait accompli, but will continue to raise it to raise capital, the strategic capital. The second point is at some stage in the game, the Chinese are going to come and make a play, and the Chinese need Pakistan today for multiple reasons. So in my view, slowly as the Pakistan economically and politically becomes weak, the Chinese will use BRI and other leverages to create a space for them from where China can execute is what I call the West Asian strategy. That is controlling of the sea lines of communications, controlling, developing an anti-excess radar strategy by deploying systems in around the Mehran coast in various places, etc., etc., etc. Developing alternative links to the southwestern China, which remains cut off. Number of other issues, as also use the collusive support of the Pakistanis to maintain pressure on us along the line of actual control. So basically, there will be a greater degree of collusion that we need to factor in. I'm not saying it is happening. I think as an analyst, I look at the potential. I'm basically a strategic analyst. I mean, I look at the potential rather than what is happening, because the capacities are being built up. Okay, so recently there was this 4-country talks: Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, China. Who midwives them? China. Who wants to have a BRI? China. Why does Ghana want to have a BRI in Afghanistan? Because China wants to have a BRI in Afghanistan because it gives you straight line connectivity through the western Afghanistan to Iran. So, there are a number of plays in play, and therefore this issue of nuclear muscle flexing or trying to use the nuclear card is not intrinsically only to tell us he can nuke us. The only idea is to highlight to other players also, I'm a strong nuclear power, I've got a reasonable military, I have capability, I can handle one end of this new alignment structure that is coming in.
Even though the economy is bankrupt and they're running with a begging bowl all over the world.
Yeah, but you see, whatever time, I think 50 times, whatever time it has gone, but every time they have been bailed out. And who's bailed them out? This $3 billion loan came on the last minute. And you know who bailed them out. If you don't know who bailed them out, I'm sure you know who bailed them out. And it was just one phone call eventually, which made the thing happen. So they are aware that those phone calls will be made. So to my view, so the whole narrative, I also want to talk a minute about another issue which is worrisome to us is the whole thing called the negative control, both in terms of tactical nuclear weapons on ground as well as whatever capacity he's trying to create at sea, and including air launch cruise missiles which he has created like Babur and things like that. And he's trying to mount a 15 or a 10 or 5 or 10 KT nuclear weapon or whatever. So in all these cases, what is happening is, as you are aware, unlike us, we have one big strategic plans division which controls all the three elements of the deterrent: the Army, Navy, Air Force. In their case, there are three separate strategic commands. There's an Army strategic command, there's a Naval strategic command, and there's an Air Force strategic command. And worry from a person like me is that to execute a tactical nuclear weapon kind of a scenario, or a battlefield strike, at some stage the control has to be delegated to the frontline commanders. And that is where the problem occurs. And frontline commanders can be rogue. He may misread the battle. He may say, I'm under threat. He will fire, etc., etc. The problem which world is currently, sir, is dealing with the fact is, what are the post-use narrative and escalation management after the nuclear weapon has been used in the year 2023 and beyond? People are absolutely unclear. United States is unclear. The Russians are unclear. Nobody is clear. Nobody says I can manage escalation. No, nobody's clear. Nobody's clear. We have no idea what kind of pressure will the political establishment be. And because you have initiated a strike, the other side will retaliate. Then the question comes is, what kind of a level of retaliation the second strike of the other guy is going to be? So so this is a very, very complex issue, and people are not understanding it. And added to that is the technological AI, advanced command control systems, rapid communications, decision-making time, decision loop is getting shorter and shorter. This is going to cause itself into another problem area. So we are seeing a situation which we need to study, examine, prepare ourselves with various contingencies. I'm not saying Pakistan. What Pakistan has said, nothing new in essentially speaking, but is reiteration under circumstances which to me needs to be taken seriously. And that is why we thought that it is important for both this to bring out this piece in an international magazine, particularly in the United States, where there are people who take, who read it and understand what kind of a genie that exists in the region and which has to be capped.
Interesting. This horizontal and vertical expansion that the Pakis talk of, you see this being driven by the Chinese? Are they the ones who are? And we know in the past they've transferred all kinds of missiles and stuff to the Pakistanis.
So, gyro coordinates. What the Chinese have given to Pakistan is the full access to operational BIDO, their satellite systems, which provide them with the same degree of advanced uh, uh, coordinates for striking targets with a reasonable degree of precision. And second thing, what they have also done is they have given them precision strike capability. So, if Shaheen 3 can be targeted to launch, to target and very important VA and VP of ours with a 5 to 10 meter accuracy, then we are looking at a very different kind of a scenario. So what happens is, this movie Oppenheimer is coming. I was in Sandia for 3 months, so I've done a lot of work over there on these basically issues. So bottom line basically is this, that people tend to be overconfident when they believe they have highly operationally functional systems. And then they start taking chances. And that's where the problem comes. Another area which is bothering Pakistanis from our side is ballistic missile defense. They believe that the ballistic missile defense shield will become so strong over a period of time that Indian core areas or critical infrastructure, strategic critical infrastructure, will re- will be outside their strike zones. And the last point I like to highlight is that there's a new element which is being introduced in the nuclear world, and that is punitive first strikes using conventional precision guided systems. So, let me take a scenario. If I see couple of batteries of NASA's deployed somewhere or the other, and I picked them up, and we are now getting a great degree of ISR, as you know, with all this MQ lines and all this nonsense. So technically, his concern is, can India launch a punitive, non-nuclear, conventional strike and take these out? So the situation is becoming a little more difficult and more to remain as a simple linear equation. It's becoming multi-dimensional kind of a situation.
I mean, his insecurities are running very, very deep.
Very deep. So
Element of paranoia, perhaps. Element of paranoia there also?
Paranoia, there is. At least I saw that firsthand. I can say.
So last question, sir. This doctrine of ours of massive retaliation, whether it's a tactical nuclear strike or something bigger than that, does that still hold or should it be changed?
No. I think our doctrine of massive retaliation is a very credible doctrine. So it puts the onus of understanding and India's reaction on the guy who wants to take the first step. India is very clear that we will retaliate. A punitive strike. What is a punitive strike? We will decide what is a punitive strike. What is the level of the punitive strike? We will decide what is the level of the punitive strike. What other things we want to do is we will do. The whole idea is in this doctrine basically is this, that we will not initiate the first step of this thing. For us, nuclear weapons are a political weapon. They are not for war fighting. They are for deterring. So for us, the punitive strike doctrine is upholding India's deterrence narrative. We believe that that is an important part, but we are not clarifying, nor need to clarify what does punitive mean in terms of numbers, quantity, quality, etc., etc. That's the choice which the political and the executive branches of our two heads of our nuclear command authority will do. Political committee and executive committee, they will decide. They will decide as to what is to be done. But it will not be. It will. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, in fact, I was told by somebody over there that he said, "You keep saying you will launch punitive strike. You think you don't seem to be very sure of it." I said, with due apology, sir, let me assure you, we are absolutely clear. And if you want to try us out, choice is yours. Don't take us down that road. We don't want to go down that road. We certainly don't want to go down. We are a peaceful people. We don't want to fight. We don't. But the question is, don't threaten us with the full spectrum deterrence and say that I can fight at 3 levels simultaneously. I said that has never happened. That will not happen. And all these things are merely exercises in showmanship and brinkmanship. That's it.
And one would also presume, given your own experience, that in all the war games you've taken part in with the Pakistanis, that nuclear option has never been resorted to.
Yes, it has not been resorted to, but there was one war game where we did take out a couple of NASAs and with warheads intact, and those were captured. See, you can't have 60 kilometers range, and we have capacity. We can easily go 60 kilometers jumping with no distance for our sensors and our capability. We can take them out in one flash. I mean, if we want to.
Yeah.
Or if we don't have the capabilities, we must develop those capabilities. But the point at issue is this. That what we are trying to say is that our punitive response strategy is fundamental to our doctrine. Don't try us out.
And also assuming we know where all their nukes are.
Everybody thinks everybody knows his nukes are, but I don't think everybody knows how much is where. No, I don't think so. don't think so. But with the kind of ISR capability we are developing and kind of system that we are putting up in the sky, if there is an unusual activity, we should be able to pick up. But in this area, I must tell you through your listeners is we have a lot of work to go of integrating our sensors. We have not integrated our sensors completely. We are working very hard on it. We got a lot of successes, but we need to work more to integrate our sensors. So that's an important. And another issue is our strategic partners. They provide us with credible information. So the whole idea is that every player in the game is invested in preventing nuclear escalation. So that's the point which we need to look at.
Yeah, that's a positive thought. Thank God.
Yes.
Brigadier, great talking to you. Very interesting. And let's see where this goes forward if we get more ideas from across the border. I presume that insecurity is driving them to all kinds of explore other origins and other territories.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Great talking to you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. God bless.
And for those of you who joined us on this conversation, thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media, Twitter. Thank you very much. Good night.
In